Hey, this is Angie Scarpa.
And Melanie Maka-Evie.
And Emily Burton.
And Alice Austin of Black Savage. And you're listening to Tom and Zeus on Shout It Out Loudcast.
Recorded in 1970, the album Led Zeppelin III catapulted Led Zeppelin into their next phase of their career with a diverse catalog of songs from folk to rock and roll to blues. Without this album, Led Zeppelin would not have become what they were about to do. The album is Led Zeppelin III, and this is another episode of the Zeppelin Chronicles.
All right, we're back. It's a Festivus Christmas miracle. It only took 7 months to get to Zeppelin III, but we figured what a wonderful stocking stuffer of a gift to have myself and Jay from the Hook Rocks and my Shout It Out Loudcast co-host Zeus, and of course the excellent Murph. Gentlemen, welcome back, Zeppelin III.
Is this a Robert Plant stocking stuffer?
It might be. It might be.
The bulge of Robert Plant stuffing stockings across the country.
This is the bulge in your podcast feed when you turn on your phone on next week.
Great. We've lived about a few lifetimes since the last show.
Indeed.
Man, it feels good to see all your faces and talk Led Zeppelin again. So glad to be here.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a long time, gents. Been looking forward to doing this episode. Didn't think it was going to be 7 months. After we're done today, let's be sure that we meet up again in early 2023. But this I think is going to be a very interesting discussion. This is an album that I think there's a wide variety of opinions, and be interesting to see if those opinions are as diverse in this conversation today.
Indeed.
Yeah, this album really has aged well over time, because I remember being younger and hearing Zeppelin fans who were older than me at the time talk about how this album wasn't very good. Oh, it was their worst out of the original four. And now when I listen to this album and I compare it to the other albums before and after, this is one of their best. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, without this album, they really wouldn't have been able to do Zeppelin IV and House of the Holy and Physical Graffiti, because this really was a change in showcasing their other influences and really what they were all about with the folk content of this album. Obviously, the blues is also a big part of it too as well. But this album really was an album that they had to make at this point in their career, because, Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2, very similar in the songs and what they did in the arrangements. Obviously, Zeppelin 2 gave us a little taste of what was coming, but this really the band dove in to their folk influences and really kind of changed the narrative of what the band was about.
All right, we'll see you next time on the Zeppelin Chronicles. As usual, though, we want to talk a little bit about what we did last time.
Yes, because we're going to spend a long time with Zeppelin III.
So we did a poll, and doing a poll about which is the best song on Zeppelin albums is extremely difficult, because Twitter polls only have 4 songs.
Yep.
And there's usually people complaining that, there could be one of 7 songs or 8 songs that people should say is one of the 4 best. So we did one on Zeppelin II. Tom, can you tell us about the poll?
Yes. So our options were Thank You, Whole Lot of Love, Bring It On Home, and Ramble On. Whole Lot of Love ran away with this one at 42%. Ramble On was at 32%. Thank You at 18%. Bring It On Home at 8%. Surprising there. I mean, Whole Lot of Love. I mean, we say this all the time. People scroll through Twitter. Oh, I know Whole Lot of Love. Bing. That's, let's see. A couple comments here from this. Our buddy Eladio. What? No Moby Dick? Do you like drums? That's a good one. And I like people like this who don't pay attention to the poll. Any other answer than Rock and Roll from Led Zeppelin IV is the wrong answer. Dude, we're talking about Zeppelin II. That's the poll. Dear God. A lot of write-in votes for Thank You, but Thank You only got 18%. Let's get into some of the episode-specific comments from Twitter and see what people think. Our buddy Dr. 2, can't wait to listen. I like Led Zeppelin 2 much more than Led Zeppelin 1, which is great, but it is a glorified covers album. Ooh. Our buddy Daryl Alba, resident Zepp head. Quite simply, Zeppelin 2 has been blueprint for hard rock since the day it was released. Vintage Rock Pod, Led Zeppelin 2 has always been my favorite Zeppelin album. And Y2 Daddy, he's a funny guy right here. He comes here with jokes. He says, if I took a drink every time someone said the word iconic, I would be wasted before the first hour was over. Well, you know what? That's a really iconic statement, and we're going to spend more time talking about another iconic album from an iconic band that has an iconic drummer. So good luck. I hope you shit-faced by now. Those are our Twitter comments.
All right, Tom, I think we got a couple of YouTube comments. I'll fly through these ones. Cody Brunette. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Hey, guys. Bruce. No. Love the show. I'm 25 years old, and I love Led Zeppelin, Kiss, and AC/DC. Can't wait to hear your thoughts about my two favorite albums, Houses of the Holy and In Through the Outdoor. Ooh. That is a fucking unique combo. God bless you, brother.
Wow. In Through the Outdoor.
Pete Starros, can't wait for you guys to review Physical Graffiti. Our buddy Montreal Boots. Awesome episode, fellas. Just heard it this morning, and this show made me realize how much this Loudcaster group resembles each other in terms of likes, dislikes, and being amazed at Vinny. We all hail across the globe with varied backgrounds, long hair, short hair, no hair, wide age bracket, wider waist size, most definitely. And while it seems what brings us together on Shout It Out Loudcast is common love of Kiss, we also share a similar appreciation for different music genres, even if it's from the same band. The song Thank You is exactly that. A ballad from the hard rock band before ballads became gateway to MTV rotation, heavy in the late 80s. But Thank You is truly special, as perfectly described by all of you guys. It brought a smile to my face when Z said that this was perhaps his favorite song of all time. Guys, Thank You was our wedding song back in 94.
Ooh, all right.
When everyone around us was choosing Bryan Adams, Whitney Houston, or Celine Dion. Can you tell he's from Canada? From the first time I heard it played on that Marantz turntable.
Nice.
And regardless whether I was 10, 20, or 50 years old, it always made me stop whatever I am doing and listen to the words, the guitar, the drums. It is a classic. By the way, the rest of the album is fucking excellent as well.
Good stuff.
Zeus, very quickly, I have to say that even in the days after we record the episode, I mean, you're right. It's an all-timer. I know when you said it was possibly your favorite song of all time ever, a song that is thoughtful, tender, considerate, to be associated with some of your comments that have been shared over the podcast. Thoughtful, tender, considerate, and Zeus. I'm like that, it doesn't, it was a surprising comment to hear from you that song resonated so much.
Yeah, but I never used the fucking word tender.
I'd use the word tender to describe what his number one song off the Peter Criss solo album was. I Can't Stop the Rain.
I think we were talking about a Roni, Tom.
Well, Love Me Tender by Elvis.
Tenderoni by Bobby Brown.
I'm just shocked more people I thought all people in Canada got married to a Rush song.
They did. Yeah, they do 2112. The dance is 18 minutes long.
And every bride has to kiss Geddy Lee before they get married.
And they all air drum during the song.
I would too. I don't blame them. And then we got just a couple of ones here. Charles Bronson, that yellow belly punk, said you should quickly jump to Physical Graffiti. I wonder what everyone's favorite album is. And our buddy Marty White said, just when I thought this series joined the bin the Elder movie got tossed in, a new episode comes out.
What's he going to think of this? How many people do you think forgot about the Zeppelin Chronicles?
All the comments say 7 months ago.
Yep.
All right. There's a couple more other ones, but we want to move this along. So, Tom, I'm done on YouTube.
Okay, I've got one here from Tony Smith. Love the review of this album. It was my first and favorite Zeppelin album. I dug out the cassette I had found, and I found something interesting. In the track listing, as well as album sequence, Living Loving Maid is track 2, side 2, immediately following Thank You, which is track 1, side 2. Maybe a cassette only thing having to do with how many songs you can fit on one side or another. In any case, great album. Can't hardly wait for the next one. Well, 7 months later, here we are.
That's true. Wow.
Thank you, Tony.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Think about that. There are people who are almost ready to expect their first child since the last time we recorded an episode of Zeppelin Chronicles.
And they consummated that child because of our episode.
And I hope their first child is a masculine child.
That's right. Yeah. And look, we joke, all joking aside, we said when we did this, these are going to be random. They're going to come from time to time. We all run podcasts. We all got lives to live. And the thing for me is you can't just whip something together when it's Zeppelin. You got to put your time into it and effort. And we all got some busy schedules, and we finally found some time. And this is how it's going to be. Hopefully it won't be 7 months, but it's not going to be a monthly occurrence. So we'll get to them as soon as we can. We appreciate the fact that you guys really want to hear these. So thank you for that. But it's on to Kansas City. It's on to Zeppelin III.
That's right.
All right. So Led Zeppelin III. I will tell you, this show is because of Led Zeppelin III. Are you guys aware of that?
Yep. I think I'm the only one who knows that.
Because we were doing the album review crew, and I'm like, I got to pick Zeppelin III. I want to do that, but I'm like, I don't want to waste Zeppelin III on fucking Sonny's moronic brain. Like, and then I'm like, well, why don't I do Zeppelin II? Like, well, wait a minute. Why don't Zeppelin I? Physical Graffiti. What are we going to do? You know, I'm like, it's not going to work. Tom, do you think we can fit in something just on Zeppelin, like a review just on Zeppelin? And hence the Zeppelin Chronicles came about, because I wanted to do Zeppelin III. There was no other album I would have picked before this bad boy.
Yep.
And we talked about it. You kind of quickly mentioned it, Jay. We always go into first our thoughts about the album and how we got to it. So why don't we go to Tom, and you could tell us about Zeppelin III first.
All right. So for me, Zeppelin III is kind of a weird album because growing up, I think we talked about this with Zeppelin 1 and 2 with those reviews. I don't have like specific memories of those albums like I do with like certain Kiss records. I just feel like it's always been part of like my musical culture, whether it's through radio or friends or whatever. But Zeppelin III, because the album is, well, growing up, it was kind of an outlier. We'll kind of get into that more. I really wasn't exposed to most of this album other than probably Immigrant Song until we got to college. And that's when that's when really the Zeppelin love, I know for me and Murph, and I'm sure for Zeus, like that's when it really took shape, because at the time, all you're doing is listen to CDs. You know, you listen to music all the time. And Zeppelin was a huge, huge college band for us. And I remember Zeppelin III hearing it, and I was like, oh, okay, I've heard Immigrant Song. Like, Gallows Pole, this song's pretty awesome. Out on the Tiles, I've never heard of this song. Like, Tangerine, that sounds familiar. Like, never heard about it. And my first instinct was to be like, wow, this is different. Like, this is not Zeppelin 1, and it certainly isn't Zeppelin 2. And I think that's the thing about this album. You know, we talked about it before we started recording, you know, feedback whenever we do an album review crew album or a Kiss album that's kind of like off the beaten path or diverse or not like standard and universally loved always seems to get the most feedback. So I think this album, I mean, we're Zeppelin nerds. That's why we have this show. So we all love it, but it's definitely kind of a weird album in a good way. But yeah, I mean, I college was probably the first time I started really connecting with Zeppelin III. And I mean, ever since, it's just been part of something I listen to all the time. Murph.
Yeah, I think for me, similar in nature, but despite, you know, us being roommates, Tom and Zeus, you know, always having the kind of the music playing, I was very late to this album. We've covered it before. Zeppelin IV, junior high. That's where I kind of discovered it. Didn't really get into Zeppelin until college. Zeppelin 1, 2, Physical Graffiti, back to 4. As you said, Immigrant Song. I actually had found an old mixtape and I had Tangerine on it, but I really did not dive into this album until well after college. And I think in some ways, and I'm sure we'll get into it, they went in a different direction. And, this is, I think in some ways, a more mature album, and it's an acquired taste. I would say of all the albums within Zeppelin's catalog, this is the album I've played most over the last 5 years.
Wow.
Not even a question. I go to it, and we'll go into some of the reasons why, but it took me a long time to stumble upon it. And, I definitely appreciate it more. And I understand why, it may have taken me some time to find it.
Jay.
This is Zeppelin growing up. This is them. I think the tour previous to this album was a huge, large tour with Zeppelin II. And I think the recording of this album had a lot to do with it. And we'll certainly get into that. But again, like I mentioned when I first spoke about it at the beginning of the episode, it does transform them into something else. And it's an album that they needed to make. It was a contrast to their first 2 albums, which also led to Led Zeppelin IV. And I don't think Led Zeppelin IV, the band is capable of making Led Zeppelin IV without this album. I think this is really something that they did, that they became comfortable with after, recording the album and writing the album, and with the arrangements and the acoustic setting and the folk style and a lot of the songs. And it carried through for the rest of their career with that diversity that they allowed themselves to be on this album. When you look at what people were expecting from them, this was completely out of left field. And that really became one of Zeppelin's calling cards, is to expect the unexpected. And this album set that tone.
So this is something real quick before we go over to Zeus. So this was an album that you kind of just grew up like this. You've had this, like Murph and I said, we kind of really jumped into this post-college for us.
I was, familiar with the album, previous to college, because of course my cousin had a huge influence on my Zeppelin fandom. But I will say, this album to me, I may have dismissed when I was younger because it didn't have the punch in the gut songs that I was used to listening to.
Yep.
But I think this album is so unique because outside of all their other albums, this album has the ability to evolve with the listener.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of growing up and you think of changing tastes and changing, things in your life, and you go back to music and some songs sound different, some songs sound better. This is one of those albums that as you get older and your life maybe that doesn't calm down, but you've experienced more, you tend to appreciate this type of music more. So when you do go revisit it, it does sound completely different, and it keeps growing with you as you get older. It's probably the only album in their catalog that really does that. I mean, you like Physical Graffiti, you're always going to like Physical Graffiti. You like Led Zeppelin 4, Led Zeppelin 2, you're always going to like those albums. This album, because of the nature and because of the atmosphere of it, allows you to kind of settle in with it as you grow up, as you get older.
Zeus.
So I got into this album when I was grade school to middle school.
Wow.
I talk about it all the time. So when I would go to Greece, I'd go buy these cassettes, and sometimes I would buy them in downtown Athens or Crete or something like that. And the tracks would always be backwards. So they wouldn't have the same songs on side A and B because they're all from Europe, these cassettes. And I had this, I played them. Tom, you know me. Everybody likes Zeppelin 4, Zeppelin 2. I'm going to try Zeppelin 3. That's going to be my album. I'd like to think that I don't want to follow along with everybody else. I want to be the contrarian and pick what I want to like. And I gravitated towards this because it's got that acoustic mix, and being such a huge country fan and things like that, I love acoustic music. So I got into this middle school, probably more so with the exception of knowing the big hits on Zeppelin IV than any other Zeppelin album I've ever had. I've played this more than any Zeppelin album I've ever had. I've played this more than probably 99% of albums that I've ever owned. I know this inside and out. I would say this is top 5 album I've played the most in my life. Easily. Wow. I know the tracks have a special meaning to me because I can remember and picture myself and what age I was and where I was, and literally sitting on a mountaintop of ancient ruins from the Byzantine Empire, where it used to be a castle, looking over the Aegean and the waves crashing against the walls, and with nobody else in sight. And like you and Mother Nature and fucking ancient ruins and waves that have been hitting that shore for thousands and thousands and thousands of years while playing Led Zeppelin in your headphones. It's fucking amazing. And then you try that visual and play Immigrant Song and tell me if you don't transport yourself back in time, then you don't have a functional brain. Like it's impossible not to hear that music and hearing the hiss and in the beginning and then not feel like you're in a fucking boat and imagining all these adventures in these ancient times and all this stuff. And that acoustic sound made it seem like you could be at a beach and playing this music and doing this, and that could be you. So it wasn't that whole lot of love, crazy fucking crunch guitar, although it did have some of that. This is a mood album. We talked about it. I said to you that the Rush album is a mood album. Automatic for the People is a mood album. Zeppelin III, more than anything, is a mood album for me. If I didn't know the tracks and you put them on and you put me one track, took one out, never learned it, and you say, what album does that fit on? I'd go, oh, that's a Zeppelin III album. I'd have more luck picking that out than any other Zeppelin album, because this has a certain type of atmosphere and feeling to it. And I'm pumped that we're finally here to this album, because, again, this is why I wanted to do this show. So Zeppelin III, after the Zeppelin II tour, which, if you consider it's about 15 months worth, the band decided to kind of like, let's try to take a break, I guess, for a little bit. Bonzo went home, and so did Jones. They both went to their home, to their family. And Jimmy and Robert came up with the idea, let's just kind of unwind and unplug, kind of. And they decided to go to Wales. And they went to, instead, because actually they were thinking about going to Northern California, and what a difference that made and what the sound would be like if they did go there instead. So they go to a rural cottage. I think I'm saying it correctly. I've heard a million different pronunciations of it, and it's Bron-Y-Aur, which is in Wales. And it's a place that Robert visited as a child. It's Welsh for like golden breast, or breast of gold, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then there's like mountainous kind of area, and it's a beautiful place. It had no running water, no electricity, and it was for them to go. They brought a couple roadies with them. I believe Robert brought his wife and a young child. Jimmy brought his girlfriend named Charlotte, and Charlotte is the mother of his daughter Scarlett. And a short little story about this Charlotte lady was for 3 years, she was Clapton's girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And then Harrison stole her. So then the thing goes that's why Clapton stole Harrison's wife afterwards. And it all stemmed from this lady that Jimmy brought, and eventually becomes the mother of his child. And so they started doing some stuff where they would walk around and grab the acoustic guitars with each other, play some stuff, come up with some ideas, work on some older ideas that they had, and started working on a few things. A bunch of the songs will come out, and we'll probably talk about them as we go to each individual songs. Then they decided to start recording some stuff. They went to Olympic Studios. That's where they first took place in 1969 in November, I believe. And then they started going to Headley Grange. That's the mansion in East Hampshire. They did some, it's got like another kind of rural kind of atmosphere to it. And then they brought in the Rolling Stones, I guess, mobile studio that they used.
Yep.
And did a lot of their recording through that. The band was complaining that the place was kind of cold. I guess everybody's bitching. It's an older place, kind of cold. But Jimmy said he saw a ghost there. And there was all sorts of spirits and shit there. Sure, he did.
Paranormal activity, Bron-Y-Aur.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, this is what they were kind of known for, a lot of that spooky shit. And but this is what they were working with to get to Zeppelin III. Robert said, now that when they were doing this album, Zeppelin III, the sky's the limit. It shows that, and this is stuff that Jay was talking about, how we can change. Shows we can do these things. It means that there are endless possibilities and directions for us to go in now. We're not stale, and this proves it. So exactly what you were saying, Jay, they're at this point now, because they did this album and got it kind of out of the way. Now you don't know what you're going to get from them. You can get that long 7-minute blues song. You can get that insane, crazy rocker, or you can get this beautiful folk song. Everything opened up after Zeppelin III. The press was really hard on this album. They didn't like it at all. A lot of the band fans didn't know what to make of it because of all the acoustic songs that were on this. And it actually turned out to make Jimmy not talk to the press for about like 18 months, they said, which that's why there's not a lot of articles and stuff and interviews during that time period, because of what the press was saying about this album. And then JPJ likes to defend the album, doesn't understand the criticism of it. And he points to Black Mountain Side and Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, about as acoustic as you can get. That were on the first song, and Thank You, and other songs that were on Zeppelin II. We're not boxed in as a metal band, he was saying. We listened to Joni Mitchell and Poco and so on. Plus, we could blow people off the stage. We're free to do whatever. No rules. And that's all because of Zeppelin III.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because even Plant says that the band was like obsessed with change, and they wanted to show that they could do all these other things. And, you hit all the bullet points there, Zeus. But I mean, after those first two albums, I mean, yeah, they could have, we use this example all the time. Yeah, they could have remained and been like an AC/DC and just put out the same thing. But look, these guys, I mean, again, the four of us, we're Zepp geeks, we're Zepp heads. These four guys are brilliant. They're geniuses in multiple ways, whether it's lyrically, arrangement wise, musicianship, vocally, whatever. They knew that they wanted to do something different, and they went after it. And I could see, how the critics are like, wow, this is kind of weird. I don't know if I like this. Well, yeah, because it's different. I mean, it's not like when Kiss did like Music from the Elder different because it was bad. It was just like, it was like, well, where's Whole Lot of Love? Where's Ramble On? Where are these songs on here? And I know that JPJ is like, well, we did Black Mountain Side and Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Dude, that was like one song. Like half of Zeppelin III is I mean, even Jimmy Page said, yeah, we wanted a rock side and we wanted a folk side of the album, because a lot of people refer to this album in terms of sides. But history is a very good, course corrector. And I think Zeppelin III is beloved for probably A, because obviously it's awesome, but B, because it is unique, it is different, and it checks off multiple boxes that maybe those first two albums didn't check off.
And I think on this album, they had fewer instances of copyright or litigation.
Yep.
There was it still popped up occasionally.
I don't know.
Well, not as much as Zeppelin 1.
No, but
it's still stuff there.
It's still out there. I know that this was, I don't know if kind of rebellious. There's a lot of different opinions. They say that, that they weren't copying the Laurel Canyon sound, but there's elements of it where I mean, if they had the folk influence from Joan Baez, with the "Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You," and their what they did on this album, I mean, there were elements, and I think as we mentioned at the outset that they were maturing. You can see from the lyrics, Plant was getting better or more confident or both in what he was putting down to the music that Page was creating, and throughout the album, I mean, we'll certainly get into it, but what I was noticing too is just how the new instruments. This is the only album that where a banjo is used, but you still see the mandolin being used and the organ. And it's not as dominant as Led Zeppelin 1, but it's still the maracas and the congas. They're so proficient and so good at so many different instruments that it's like this just salad and all the ingredients mixed together and just new sounds were coming out of it. I think it'll be very interesting to see what we say about each song, but the creative process, going in Welsh country. I like the lyric, the comment that they had the tape recorder and, flashback to the 70s. They had their ever-ready batteries with them at all times to put down the sound. And I thought what was pretty cool was that, they were still very business-like. They weren't turning around as quickly as Led Zeppelin 1 or 2, but that they could get all this sound together. And they were doing some of the recordings, in the UK. They did some of it in Memphis, and how they were still putting together in bits and pieces and still came out with a finished product that, as I think we're all agreeing over time, is just, looked back at more fondly by fans and critics.
I mentioned in the first episode we did on the Zeppelin Chronicles of the what ifs, right? What if Robert Plant wasn't found by Jimmy Page? What if Terry Reid didn't refer Robert Plant to Jimmy Page? What would the band have become? What would have been Led Zeppelin's legacy? The big what if with Led Zeppelin III is this is the rebirth of Led Zeppelin early on in their career, because it gave them freedom and it gave them confidence. It gave them the ability to move away of the sound that they had created with fans across the world with Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2, which catapulted them into going after it on other albums, not being afraid to go through doors that maybe were not there and opportunities were not there previous to this album. Without this album, there's no Led Zeppelin 4. Without this album, there's no Houses of the Holy. There's no Kashmir. There's no In the Light. There's no Presence. There's none of that, because as we saw, Led Zeppelin evolved from album to album after this, and this accelerated it. This gave them the approval for themselves and from their fans to do it. And when you look at the albums, whether it's Gallows Pole and whether it's That's the Way or Tangerine and these things that they were doing on this album, and then you follow this up with arguably their biggest album of all time, Led Zeppelin 4, and then into House of the Holy with the time changes on Jamaica and the different sounds and tones on that, heading into Physical Graffiti with the different styles that they heard in like Morocco, I think it was, and looking for different types of music to put into their songs and create this diverse catalog of music. It all starts with Led Zeppelin 3. And whether you are a fan that has grown into this album like I have, whether you're a fan like Zeus who loved it from the beginning, or whether you still don't like it, this album is so important to the history and legacy of this band, because as I said before, without it, what we hear after probably never happens. And that's the amazing thing. That is the legacy of this album.
So, Led Zeppelin III, released October 5th, 1970 in the United States, released October 23, 1970 in the UK, produced Jimmy Page, mixed Andy Johns and Terry Manning. It went to number one US, UK, and more. 6 times platinum. Technically was recorded at Headley Grange with Rolling Stones Mobile Studios, Island Studios, and Olympic Studios. The album itself, as we talked about earlier, took a little bit of a beating from the press. Fans weren't sure. It sold, I think it shipped like 700,000 when it first came out. So it sold rather quickly and maybe stalled a little bit because people were expecting 10 songs of Whole Lotta Love. But because they didn't do that, they allow them to put out, I don't know, Stairway to Heaven, to do something different like that, Going to California and more, because they were able to do that and let Led Zeppelin III take the hits. Now people are like, oh, they do this kind of music too. What am I going to get? I'm going to get a mix. Now they can put albums together where you have a blues track, where you have a folk track, where you have a heavy metal song and things, all because of this album. Led Zeppelin III follows along with the first two with a unique album cover. Tom, want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is about as unique as it gets. It was the packaged in a gatefold, but the big thing about this was that it had really unique artwork where there was images just put all across the cover of it. You had Led Zeppelin Led Zeppelin III written in this really interesting kind of bubbly font. But the big thing was that they were on top of where the graphics were, there were little cutout holes, and behind that was a rotatable disc that had other images, so that each time you turned the disc, you'd see little different visuals that would pop up through those holes. And it was designed by an artist that Jimmy Page knew, went by the name of Zacron. And it's funny because of this kind of sophisticated artwork, this rotatable laminated disc, it held up production of the album for almost 2 months. You got to think about this back in this day and age, putting out something as this kind of meticulous and interesting, a moving album cover. I mean, I have it here, and it's incredible. It's extremely unique. So I think we'll talk about the front cover before we get into, maybe what's in the gatefold or in the back cover. But I remember even before being familiar with the movable disc, just the cover itself kind of stood out because it's just all a variety of images that really don't have a connection to anything.
I actually do remember vaguely of growing up. One of my childhood friends that lived on the street had older brothers, 4 or 5 years older, and they had, AC/DC, The Who, and they had Zeppelin. And I do remember that we were, 6 or 7 years old, and just grabbing the cover and using the wheel, and just I have that image. We didn't play it. It was just, oh, this is different. So, because obviously as you get older, when you get to the CDs, it's just the uniqueness and kind of specialty of vinyl back in the day. 40 years later, I still have that memory.
Again, it's the tone of the band, even with the album cover. Expect the unexpected. You think of the first album, that legendary cover into the Brown Bomber, Led Zeppelin II, and then they release something like this that you really don't know what to think of it. It's kind of, is it art? Is it whatever? It's just something different that not a lot of bands were doing at the time, which again feeds into that mystique of Led Zeppelin. And it's almost like a parallel to the album, to the music, is we're going to release this album with this folk and acoustic atmospheric type of style. And we're going to release this album cover that allows us to do whatever the hell we want to do from this moment forward, whether it's the Led Zeppelin IV cover and so on. It's just, it's a band that just keeps you guessing with everything they're doing. The lore of Zeppelin, the mystique of Zeppelin and this is all part of it. It's doing something that is against what people are expecting you to do. And that is one of the greatest single things about this band.
So the album itself, the white cover with a bunch of different images, like a Zeppelin, a smile, the band members themselves. There are butterflies on this, planes. And then I have like the album, you open it up. It's got that. I love the photo of the four of them.
Yes.
Right?
And and Zacron,
which is the back.
Yeah, and he said he quote, I wanted to show them as the giant force that they were in music. So it wasn't an accident that he picked those 4 images for that.
That could have been a sweet album cover itself.
Agreed.
That image is actually on the single for Immigrant Song.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Which I believe also had Hey, What Can I Do on the B-side.
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll get to that because there's a little something funky about that single. But on this though, I like it because I love the contrast of the white with all the images on there. And then I have the disc, the remastered, the CDs that they did over and over again. I think, was it 18, 14? When did they do all these? Do you remember?
I think it was
all these 14.
Geez, I think it was. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and which this is my favorite one, and actually, Rolling Stone is actually I think the one that said it too. This is the best deluxe one with the tracks that they give you on disc 2, which has got some awesome tracks, and I want to get into that afterwards. But apparently, on this, Jimmy Page wanted to send a group from Terry Manning's idea to send a message to the fans, so he put on the master disc 2 comments from his buddy there, Aleister Crowley. Side 1 had "So Mote Be It," and side 2 had "Do What Thou Wilt."
Yeah.
Again, Motley Crue type shit before its time.
Yep.
Ooh, I'm the devil worshiper.
But I think Jimmy Page, I don't think he was doing it for show the way Nikki Sixx was. I think Jimmy was like legitimately into this shit back then.
Maybe, but it's certainly trying to draw that type of attention.
Kind of interesting thing here. So on the gatefold, when you open it up, it's got the track listing, and then at the bottom, it says credit must be given to Bron-Y-Aur, a small derelict cottage in South Snowdonia, for painting a somewhat forgotten picture of true completeness, which acted as an incentive to some of these musical statements. Okay, then. Okay,
Yeah.
then. Now, getting back to what you said briefly, Zeus, about the deluxe version and like the demo disc.
Yeah.
Just so the cover of that is kind of the opposite. It's a black background.
Yeah, love it.
I actually think it's better than the original.
How fucking cool is this cover?
I think it's better than the original. It's black background. Zeppelin is written in a white outline on a black background, and then each of the images, it's almost like the composite, like the negatives. But I think I don't know. I like it. I like it more than the original. But
this album, obviously, Zeppelin put their time. This is an art form at this point.
Yeah,
vinyls and things like that. It's an art form. So they have this guy Zachron come in. He adds the spinning wheel, at which you said, delayed everything down, and it delayed it by a couple months. But still, afterwards, Page later on was complaining he didn't like it. He said it was kind of teeny boppish, artistic approach. And he said that it was that way because they felt rushed that they had to get it out because it had already been delayed so much. But he told his friend at the time, I love it. And then he changed his mind a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. And for these super deluxe, when they re-released everything, each of those bonus discs kind of have the similar thing. It's like the composite negative of the album cover, which kind of gives you like kind of a unique perspective. But yeah, this is definitely a crazy album cover, really unique for any band, not just Zeppelin.
Yes. And one last thing before we move on, because I always found it interesting for the Zeppelin, freaks like me. Zeppelin III, they have some of the extra tracks on the 2 CD deluxe edition, but there were about 12 songs that came from all this stuff, the Bron-Y-Aur and all that section, that ended up elsewhere, and you can kind of find them. So during this time, Over the Hills and Far Away and the Crunch ended up going on Houses of the Holy, The Rover, Bron-Y-Aur, the instrumental, and Down by the Seaside, going Physical Graffiti. Poor Tom ends up on Coda. Key to the Highway and Trouble Mind, kind of a mashing of those 2 songs, end up going on the deluxe version of this album. And St. Tristan's Sword, which has been out there for a while,
Yep.
finally it does end up on the deluxe version of Coda. So you can get that there. There are a couple other rough sketches recorded, or there's like audio cassettes of them, something called Another Way to Wales, I Want to Be Her Man, and I think it's Summertime Bron-Y-Aur, Summer at Bron-Y-Aur, an instrumental. And then obviously the other one, which we all know, and that's Hey, Hey, What Can I Do, which was the B-side to Immigrant Song.
The greatest B-side in the history of B-sides. I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, how that did
All
not
time.
how did that not get a proper album release is just for a band that very rarely made a mistake. Not releasing that as an album track and having that be like this long lost gem of a B-side is stunning to me.
Take your least 3 favorite songs off this album, because I'm sure they're all different for all of us, and throw in Over the Hills, Far Away, The Rover, and Hey, Hey, What Can I Do?
Right.
This is the greatest Zeppelin album of all time. No fight if you put those 3 on there without a question.
It is impressive how, obviously drugs and alcohol had an influence as well, but in later years, the creativity and was more of a grind, just how much they were able to create during this time that just trickled out. They had so much material that they were able to kind of put out other pieces in future years. It's, it just seems like that was, obviously Lightning in a Bottle was a longer period, but that visit and inspiration is, what it created is astounding.
Indeed.
Well,
Yeah, Hey, What Can I Do was such a magical moment on what was later the box set, right?
Yep.
And I think everyone's asked that question is, why wasn't this ever released before? Why wasn't this on the album? Why was this a B-side to the Immigrant Song?
That and Traveling Riverside Blues, probably 2 of my all-time favorite Zeppelin songs, were never properly released on a studio album. Think of the greatness of a band like that. When 2 of your favorite songs are not studio tracks, like studio releases, just stunning the amount of the content that they had.
yeah. Well, are you guys ready to go pillage, raping, and everything else that includes as a Viking?
Let's go to the land of ice and snow.
All right, let's go to track number 1.
Immigrant Song. Everybody knows this song. Zeus and I frequently, whether it's ARC or Kiss album releases, we always use the term fatigue factor. Now, the Immigrant Song is one of those songs where you hear it all the time. But 2 things. A, there's no fatigue. And B, it's because it's a fucking absolutely incredible song. I don't care. I know you hear it and you're like, oh, Immigrant Song, like that. It's the song that it's like the song that like people who don't like Zeppelin like, it's like, I know Immigrant Song. The song is stunning for a reason. And I remember one of the first times I heard it, or after I had gotten the book, I'm like, oh, that's where Stephen Davis got the title of the book, Hammer of the Gods. And the way he says, I'm like, this is so cool. But it's Immigrant Song. It's iconic. It's legendary. And there's a reason.
You said the word.
Drink.
Stop drinking. But there are a few songs by bands that you throw out there, and this is one of them. I mean, the howling of Robert Plant, the drums, the gallop. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into like kind of the story of the land and of ice and snow and everything. It's just an incredible song. And, I wanted to bring up that fatigue factor thing because we talk about that a lot. Even listening to this album repeatedly, preparing for this episode, I'm like, I'm not sick of this. I'm not. And I've been hearing this song forever and I'm not sick of it.
So I know the last 2 albums, when I've spoken about the first song, how they just come out guns blazing. And, in this case, it's 3 for 3. And if it's 1970 and you're coming back from the record store hearing this, you're thinking that, whoa, they're going to be just delivering the hammer, no pun intended, for the throughout this album. It was really going to probably get your hopes up. And the fact that 2 minutes and 26 seconds, you hear about stuff in the late 70s with punk, and it was just, 2 minutes of aggression and everything. But the amount of sound and creativity when you have the headphones on in this and what they deliver, it's staggering. And, even with, I talked about earlier, just where Plant, is getting more confident in his lyrics. He's talking about his trip to Iceland and, just the Vikings. And I've always loved at the end of the song, for peace and trust can win the day despite of all you're losing. Like he's really starting to, bring the fastball with his writing. But I will say this, and I do apologize that in the weeks ahead, if anyone's watching Elf, but I cannot get out of my head when Buddy the Elf calls and says that the radiator is making a hissing sound. He goes, it sounds like, and I hear Robert Plant. So I watch Elf and I'm thinking of Led Zeppelin.
I can't tell if you just ruined Elf or the Immigrant Song or both.
Maybe I made both better.
Okay, good. Maybe you made them both better. That's right.
Immigrant Song, to me, if you look at all the first songs on all of Zeppelin's albums, whether it's Good Times, Bad Times, whether it's Black Dog, this is a perfect way to start an album. And what's so great about this is kind of what we're talking about with this album is it makes you think you are getting the Led Zeppelin album that you want, right? When you are young and you're in 1970, 1971, whenever you purchase this album, you put this on the turntable for the first time and it starts to crackle and you hear Immigrant Song. You're like, this is Zeppelin. I'm in. And then it all goes away slowly as the album keeps going, right? I mean, with, the songs that came after it, and then it goes into this acoustic, folksy type of album. But I just love the way they just gave you so much power with the first song to kind of just remind you of who they are before you go and listen to this other stuff that we're putting out. These diverse songs that you didn't think we could do. And it makes the listener, makes this Led Zeppelin fan feel a sense of comfort before their world is just turned upside down when they listen to this album. So that, when you think of it that way, the appreciation for this song is much different than, Good Times, Bad Times, which just shows the force and power in the introduction. And this is very similar to that force and power for an introduction. But the difference is what comes after it. And I just love the way they kind of fuck with people with this song and the introduction to it.
So the song actually charted. It went to number 16 in the United States. I can't believe it. Immigrant Song, written by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. The working title of the song was Song in F. We haven't talked about the hiss in the beginning.
Yes.
Which was the build-up and some echoed feedback. And you can also hear the count back from Bonzo in the beginning as well. Mm-hmm. The Immigrants were the Vikings. That's Plant's, interest in Celtic mystical in his trip to Iceland. They actually went to Iceland right before, I think it was 6 days before the Bath Festival. And then they played this at that legendary concert, the Bath Festival, in June 28, 1970. If you ever see images of that, Jimmy Page looks like a flasher. He's got that fucking hat on.
Yep.
And the guy that got charged with mopery in Revenge of the Nerds, the Flasher's jacket on, he looks like.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a weird look for him. But that concert is extremely legendary. It became their opener from 1970, 1972. And then, as we talked about, the greatest B-side of all time, it had Hey, Hey, What Can I Do as the B-side. And I believe that's the only time they had a non-album track as a B-side on an album. And in Japan, they made an era. And on that, they had Out of the Tiles as the B-side. And if you can find that 45, Tom is on the hunt.
I am now.
You will make a fucking shitload of money if you can find that B-side.
after you pay a shitload of money for it.
Yeah, or you fucking finding some poor suckers like wife is selling his poor suckers like estate. Oh, here's some old records my husband's getting rid of.
Yeah, I read it was getting 30 grand.
Yeah, something
Wow.
like that. And what is he getting now? It's the song. Obviously, we can tell. You know it. It's legendary. The Vikings' invasion of the British Isles in the 8th century. I just put it. It's just a fucking kick-ass opening riff. The cymbals crash, then the drums, then the guitar, then that fucking legendary wailing,
Incredible.
which to me could be as corny as fuck if you don't do it right.
Yep.
It could come across as like, this is the silliest thing. What the fuck is he Tarzan? I mean, that's how silly it could come off. He fucking nails it. I mean, Robert, when you think like, oh, maybe that's him in his prime, as we go along, he's gotten better and better. His voice is better on this album, I will say, and this is proof of it, than the first two albums. More confidence, more I can fucking hit this note and do what I want with it. At about the 24-second mark, then all of a sudden, boom, the bass comes in, gives it that fucking even heavier sound. And again, it doesn't have to be just like thrash metal to be heavy. This is just fucking straight up heavy rock. And Robert's voice, when he goes to the Hammer of the Gods, he's doing a little homage, I think. I don't know. For me, it's a little Elvis thing he does. And he knows it because he's the biggest Elvis fan. He'll go, Hammer of the God. Like, he does that. And that's something Elvis would do on a lot of his earlier track and things like that. And there's his voice. There's a lot of those little things in bells and whistles and that you pick up on all these tracks. So you're like, what's that? And it's always, I don't know of any other band that does it more than Zeppelin, where you're like, what is that thing like that, Mark? What is this at this? What is that? Like, it's fascinating stuff because it just never ends. And he's got some legendary lyrics here. The whole Valhalla, I'm coming. Everybody knows that. Shit, they made a fucking Assassin's Creed over that game.
Yep.
From that.
That's right.
Right? Yep. They have that. The bass line in this whole fucking thing is sick. And then when he raises his voice and changes it to the On We Sweep with Thresh and I'm not going to try to sing it because not only it'll be fucking terrible, but it'll be even worse because what he's doing is off the charts. It's you can't. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm almost at a loss for words until the next song because I'll say the same thing about that one too. The whole music, the lyrics, Robert's wailing, all of this. It honestly, like I said earlier, if it doesn't transport you to a different time and place in history and you imagining or vision of yourself on this fucking boat with all these Vikings going on this thing, I don't know what to say. One other track, and only other track I could think of that makes me think like that, and we talked about it on ARC, is The Trooper by Iron Maiden. When I hear that, I think of the light of the Charge of the Light Brigade, and think of him being in the Crimean War on a fucking horse and getting to a battle. Like, this is what that song makes you feel like. It's got that, like that ongoing like presence of like something's coming up. And then at the end, Robert goes off and does this weird vocal harmonizing, which he does a lot of in this album, the dubbing of his voice. And there's a point in time where some of the harmonizing he does with himself, I don't know if it's done on purpose. It misses its mark. So the dubbing is off. So you can hear him say something before he dubs the voice over it. I think that's when he's trying to say something, and he's doing something really weird at the 152 mark. And that's all the vocal harmonizing. And then it stops. I think it's at 152 or 144, right around there, that he does that. There's no guitar solo. This movie ends up in School of Rock, which we all know about that. And Jack Black did something where he had to write to him and tell him, can you please put this in? And he wrote to him personally to allow him to do that. And then there's one other funny thing. I saw this in a fucking movie my parents were watching in the 80s in a Greek movie they had rented. This one, they were renting VHSs like Blockbuster and stuff in the TV room when I was in high school. It's an old black and white Greek movie, and it's this band covering fucking Immigrant Song. And I read up on it, and I found them, and there's a YouTube clip of it. It is about the fucking worst cover, silliest thing you've ever seen. And it's from 1972 in black and white, and someone's covering Immigrant Song.
Wow.
What movie?
Yikes.
I don't know. It's a Greek name of a movie. It's, all in Greek. It's like some comedy special. They're at a nightclub and this band is playing it. I'll send you the clip. It's fucking horrendous. But I'm gushing over this song. What a way to open up an album, huh?
Zeus, just to add to your last comments, and Jay, I know you've previously made a reference of your dislike for covers, but speaking of movies, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the opening of that movie, that's actually I was shocked when I was watching the movie that they allowed it, and two, I was pleasantly surprised at how good of a cover that one was.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's one of the ones that is tolerable.
All right, guys, let's go to the second song.
Friends. So Jay kind of hinted at it, like, Immigrant Song, Zeppelin III, this is amazing. You're going to kick our ass with this album. Here comes Friends. And you're like, wait, what is going on here? So, okay, acoustic, an incredible string section arranged by John Paul Jones, who to this day continues to just be completely underrated in this band. Page one, like an Indian style to the sound. Couple things about this song. So, it's funny because, the song is called Friends. It's acoustic, but the thing that throws me is just that real, like, haunting, the string arrangement that is, it almost sounds like it could almost be in like a thriller or like a horror movie. It's like, it's very like dreary, and the combination of that string with the lyrics, it's this song makes you feel like, it almost makes me feel like uncomfortable when I hear it. And even the way Robert's like tone, the way he's singing, you got Bonham on the congas because there's no real drums in it. But one thing about this song, and I don't know if I've ever said this about Zeppelin, because I love all things Zeppelin. I love the 3-minute songs. I love the 10-minute songs. I love the 8-minute songs. This song is just too long. It's just too long because it doesn't do anything. It's the same thing. It doesn't go anywhere. Like there's no drums that kick in. There's nothing that it goes on for just a little too long for me. And I don't really think I have ever said that about a Zeppelin song, but it sure as hell is a curveball coming off of Immigrant Song.
So Tommy, as soon as you made the reference of haunting, I guess taking a quick step back, listening to this, you hear the little elements of like, oh, okay, this is gonna lead to Kashmir at a later time with the Indian sound, the congas. It's definitely probably wasn't a surprise for people listening because the second song on the previous albums kind of went in a different direction as well. So it probably wasn't a showstopper, but the sound haunting I had down here. I just remember, now I was born in 73, but I always remember my father watching TV at night, the 70s, like not trying to be, kind of be wise, I suppose, like probably like Kojak. It was like, dark TV shows. And that sound, especially, where you've got the strings, but at the end with the synth, whatever that feedback is, that sound made me think back to things that kind of gave me an eerie feeling up in bed, listening to my father watch TV. And also it kind of reminded me a little bit of the sound of Faces of Death. It was just that creepy sound.
Faces of Death.
Just, it's a haunting song and with a song title of Friends. And then you read the lyrics. And I think the backstory of it is that Page was kind of inspired, based off of a bad relationship. And then Plant came in and gave the lyrics, and, you hear the title and like, there's nothing Friends about it. I mean, I think of Friends, I think of something like Elton John, and this is completely on the other side of the spectrum from the lyrical side. But yeah, it's probably a minute longer than it needed to be, and it does make an impression on you, but it's definitely not one that I would say that I go running to.
This song could very well be on Physical Graffiti with the strings and with the arrangement of the song. But if you dive into this, and the reason why it's got that haunting tone to it is because it's the ultimate friend zone song.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, when you go over the lyrics of this tune and you read them, I mean, dude, that's like, we're all guys. We've all been told that at one time or another by a girl that we've had a crush on and liked. I mean, this is the ultimate cut me off at the knees. And I think the haunting theme to it kind of resembles, does that obsession with whomever, a girl you love and she's rejecting you, thinking you're more like her brother. Does it then become very obsessive and very kind of stalkerish? So it kind of gives like that weird, crazy haunting tone that you guys referred to. But as far as songs go, I'm kind of give or take too, as well with Friends. I do appreciate the lyrics because I think Plant does a masterful job of kind of catching that essence of the friend zone that, we now refer to when people go through that. But it's a very well written song. The arrangement is great. I just don't think they kind of go together.
So Friends, written by Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. The working title on this one was My, Oh, My. Obviously, JPJ, the string section, all arranged by him. And that's that Moog synthesizer, not to be confused with Andy Moog, which is going on in the background along with the strings. And from what I understood, he would try to do, they said they were trying to make like an Indian type music, but they were all string players, but none of them were Indian. So they couldn't get anybody who could play that style. Now, I kept reading about all the articles about this song and the 5 different books about breaking down every Zeppelin song that I have. They kept mentioning this thing by Gustav Holst about the planets, this music. And this one is on Mars. If you find it, it's some classical music stuff, and play it, you're like, this is it. This is the haunting. This is exactly it. It's completely taken from that. I don't know how he doesn't get sued for that, because he just totally took it and put it over this acoustic song. So it is like that horror feeling where that music is like The Shining or something like where it's quiet and then you have like a loud, sharp Wagner type of noise. And you're like, what the fuck? But it's daunting. It's hanging over you. And originally people were like calling this a Crosby, Stills and Nash ripoff. Fuck off. Fucking, what's his name? Fat David Cosby can go eat a dick. He sucks. So does his stupid mustache. Anyways, so in 1972, they went and recorded this with the Bombay Symphony Orchestra, and that's on the deluxe version of Coda. So They did get to do something like that. It's a Bron-Y-Aur song, acoustic song, the only one on side 1. And Jimmy was saying something along the lines of, it may be acoustic, but it's specifically done this way because it has way more balls doing it acoustic than it does electric. Because you just listen to them fucking strumming away. That's some heavy shit on the acoustic guitar.
Yep.
Jimmy says the lyrics are about him fighting with his girlfriend, Robert, but Robert's the one who wrote the lyrics. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That's some Gene shit right there. Yeah, that's about this. Dude, you didn't even write it. Anyways, Robert said it's an ending relationship between lovers or friends. In the beginning, this is the second time of 3 times. The second, you can hear them muttering.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something why like Jimmy just likes that, to have like weird shit in the beginning of a song.
I love it.
Leave it in. Yeah. The piano, like coming up and
love that.
Graffiti, or this. And then you can hear Andy John saying, shh. and the muttering going on and stuff. Bonzo's playing the congas. JPJ's playing a bottleneck string bass. Like, it's never just, he's got an electric guitar and he's playing bass. It's always something fucked up.
Yep.
Robert is again harmonizing with himself, and you can hear that. Every line is just him singing, and then looking for what I know twice. He says that, and then looking for what you know. And then at the end, the Moog synthesizer comes in.
Yep.
It literally sounds like a plane. Sounds like fucking something off of Dark Side of the Moon. It sounds like a plane, helicopter landing or about to crash or something. And this was only played live once, September 29, 1971 in Osaka, Japan. And then there's another bad dub. If anybody's interested in this shit, at 2:36, you can hear him come in early with the part. I don't know if they're doing that on purpose to leave these earworms in, but all these overdubs of Robert, they're not matching up, and you can catch them and listen to them if you put the earphones up. But then you got the I don't know, we can start with this one, but we can kind of wait till we get to the next track and talk about that whole synthesizer and why it's there.
Yeah, I think we could. I mean, just Zeus, I had in my notes of how the engineer basically deleted whatever was the ending and the bridge into the next song, and that's where the synth came in. And it's funny. It was, rumor has it was that once the engineer recognized that he had screwed up, he had left and was never to be seen again. Yeah,
supposedly Jimmy was like hearing the tape or something fuck up, and he looked up and goes, "Why the fuck is that red light on?" You recorded over Bonzo's intro. But they're like, Bonzo couldn't have been like, they're like, somebody was saying like, that story's not true, because if so, Bonzo just recorded if they were in the studio doing that shit. This was when they were mixing it. They may have fucked up, or better yet, like someone said, Jimmy just made that story up. He wanted that synthesizer to overlap into two songs, kind of like, a Dark Side of the Moon shit where it bleeds into the next track. But we're going to talk about the next track, and that's this.
Celebration Day, also referred to as what Robert Plant calls it, his New York song. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. So piggybacking on the story about the engineer kind of screwing up the ending of Friends, which screwed up the beginning of Celebration Day. It kind of makes sense. First of all, I love the existing intro to Celebration Day. I love the way it comes in. But you can tell that there might have been something going on with the truth of that story, with the editing and the way that it was done, because when Bonham comes in with the drums, it almost sounds like it's like a reverse, like fade in. Like if you listen to it closely, it sounds like that it's almost like not a natural way of him entering the song, that you could tell there was probably something going on there. Our buddy Martin Popoff, who has an incredible book that we use as a resource for these episodes, calls Celebration Day, quote, the greatest damn Led Zeppelin song of all time. Wow.
Yep.
It's an incredible song. I love the way that the guitar, this is a song, we talk about this a lot about, we talk about headphone songs or headphone music. When you listen to this song with headphones, there is so much going on. It is incredible what is going on with the guitars, the slides, the bass, everything that Bonham's doing. It's an incredible song. And to me, I think it's a kind of a good quote unquote recovery from Friends, kind of pulling people back into the rock mood. It's got a great chorus, because it's got a great groove, and another just really tremendously underrated Zeppelin song that you really don't have many people talking about.
Yeah, Tommy, with the headphones, this is I'm a runner. I jog just about every day. This is probably the only Zeppelin song that I feel like I can run to, because it's just got this upbeat to it. And if you had listened to Zeppelin 1, listen to Zeppelin 2, and then you come to this is unique. Like, there is not a song that I think that they had to date that sounds like this. The beginning with Plant's lyrics. He's kind of, talking, he's not really singing, and he's kind of building up, and then boom, it comes out and hits you with full force. I love the guitar solo, because this is where Zeppelin 1, 2, they would have those, the ability, if they were playing live, it would be a lot of, improvising. This is tight. This is just like almost to me, thinking that this comes out in 70, this sounds like, what may have inspired guitarists during the arena rock era. Like this sound, it's tight, it's polished. It sounds like something that Page could just, play over and over again. It's only like, 30 seconds, but I love that. That's my favorite part of the song. And then at the end, the last minute or so is just a great, as I said, like an arena rock sound. And, having this as the opener for Celebration Day when they did that tribute concert, it makes sense because it can get the whole crowd worked up in a fury very quickly.
Imagine having a song like this that when people talk about great Zeppelin songs, this song is rarely ever in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of their greatest songs of all time. I mean, that's how great their catalog is. I mean, if any song proves the greatness of Zeppelin, it's Celebration Day, because it's a song that you easily forget about, not because it's okay, but because there's so many great songs that they have. For me, listening to this album, hearing Immigrant Song, being wowed by it, being just absolutely ready to go, and then hearing Friends, and you're kind of like, all right. And then hearing this, it gives you such a feel of what they're about live. Like that beginning, where Plant's talking, and then Bono comes in, and it just kind of gives you a quick, jab, right, to the gut, and it keeps going. And it's such a perfect, to me, knowing their live catalog, it really gives you a representation of Zeppelin performing for whatever reason. I mean, obviously it's layered and it's got things going on in the song, and it's very produced very well, but it also gives you a sense of rawness that they were about live. I know that's what I get from it. I think it's a perfect song for them to open up a show. A lot of people say rock and roll, Immigrant Song, of course. Celebration Day is a fantastic song. It is a hidden gem in their catalog. It shouldn't be. Any other band that has come after them would love to have a song like this that is forgotten about be their best song that they ever recorded, because it's such a phenomenal tune. Again, with all the layers and what's going on and what's happening, again, leading the Zeppelin fan down a different path of kind of what's to come. And I do appreciate that more and more as I hear this album every time I listen to it.
I'm surprised it did not become a classic rock staple. I mean, it's not
tailor-made for it.
Absolutely.
It's one of those songs that when you talk about Zeppelin deep cuts, there are songs that were deep cuts when we were growing up. Like When the Levee Breaks off of Zeppelin IV is a perfect example of what used to be a Zeppelin deep cut. I don't know if you can really consider When the Levee Breaks a deep cut anymore, because it's in rotation in classic rock and it's become what it has become. Celebration Day is one of those songs that still remains that deep cut that the casual Zeppelin fan or the new Zeppelin fan may not be aware of and may not appreciate it because of all the other great songs they have, but it's been able to maintain kind of that cult lore to it. Like the Zeppelin fans really know the song and they love it. And for whatever reason, like you said, Murph, it's never been a staple on classic rock radio, which it should be. And it's also kind of cool that it isn't, because everyone thinks they know all these Zeppelin songs because they get played all over the radio. There's very few songs that you can call a deep cut now, and this is one of them, and this is probably the best of the bunch.
All right, Celebration Day, written by John Paul Jones, Jimmy Page, and Robert Plant. The lyrics supposedly inspired by Robert's initial impression of New York cities, or sometimes interpreted as about a groupie. Robert would sometimes introduce the song. I think Tom had mentioned as the New York song on the 1971 tour. They played it from like 71 to about 73 on their live shows. Interestingly enough, the Celebration Day concert they did not too long ago, I don't even think they played that song, even though they named the concert after that. If you listen to this song and that whole synthesizer in the beginning, and you got the coming on the guitars, it's a very 90s grungy kind of song. There's a lot of shit going on there, especially with the synthesizer and all that feedback going on and the guitars going. I always used to think, like, is that an acoustic? Oh, this is kind of a mid kind of acoustic hard rock. I don't know. I'm not sure, but it is electric. That's what they're playing. And there seems to be two riffs going on at the same time.
Yep.
And that's what makes this song so different and so weird. But there's that riff at the end of every line that Robert would say, ding, ding, ding. That thing fucking kicks ass.
Earworm.
Oh, my God. I love it. The line, her face is cracked from smiling, could be seen as talking about the Statue of Liberty, they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But musically, I write, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, Robert sounds like he's rapping in the beginning. Face is cracked from smiling. All the tears that she's been crying. Like, boom, boom. But the riff is fast and fucking furious. Robert's voice is in fucking rare form. The drums are awesome. The guitar, that guitar sound after every Robert line, it down, down, down. The chorus is one of my favorite choruses of all of Zeppelin's catalog. My, I'm so happy. I'm going to do anything. And then you can hear Bonzo, boom, 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 like just his drumming fills right over that. And then bang, the cymbal again. I'm at a loss. And while that's happening in the My, I'm so happy chorus, check out fucking John Paul Jones' bass line in that. Fucking insane.
He is slapping the bass right there, baby.
He's going nuts during that. And then this is why when you name your guitarists, you name who your favorite guys are. Jimmy has feel. There's so much feel in that solo. It makes you want to pick up a guitar and learn how to do that. It's got so much feel and touch on it, and it's so emotional, and it actually makes you feel. And then during that solo, Bonzo's drums are going off too, and he's hitting this. It's just the whole thing is going insane. Anyways, during that, even John Paul Jones, you can hear his bass going off. A little bit similar to what I was saying to you about, I forget who it was. I think it was the Rush album we were doing. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to hear his fucking solo, but I'm blinded by the drums going off and the bass. But this one somehow works because they're letting Jimmy's guitar soar over that. But if you want to hear that, all the other ones, you can hear them and pick them out. The song is like an attack. I just feel like it's just constantly going after you and constantly going forward. And it's relentless. And it's such, I'm trying to think, is there a more positive song, happy song in the Zeppelin catalog?
I'm sure maybe we'll get to one. I don't know.
It's called Celebration Day. My, I'm so happy. Dan, 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 the drums. It sounds like a fucking jubilee. It sounds like they literally, like they just won the Super Bowl. It's a fucking uplifting song. I can't think of a happier, more positive Zeppelin track.
Well, he says it in the song. I'm so happy. So it's right there for you.
Whew. Are we ready for the blues now?
Since I've been loving you, so especially on the first album, they tried this twice with You Shook Me, I Can't Quit You Baby, both fantastic. But this right here, they have perfected the art of the slow, painful blues track right here. Absolutely spectacular. This is a showcase of the band right here. Anybody out there who's going to try to tell you that Robert Plant is not the best vocalist in the history of rock or hard rock or whatever you want to talk about, listen to this song right here. It's a friggin' clinic on being a frontman. The song is incredible. One of the famous little stories about this, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, never really noticed it until I read about it. And once I heard it, I can't unhear it, is Bonham's squeaky bass pedal. As soon as I read about that, I was like, wait, what? Now I'm like, oh, now I can't not hear that, especially at the very beginning. Every time he slowly hits that bass drum, you could hear it. And Paige used to talk about it all the time. One weird kind of interesting factoid I didn't realize again until researching this was this song was going to be on Led Zeppelin II, but it got bounced in place of Whole Lot of Love, which I was like, damn, imagine this band being that good. We're like, yeah, we'll put that on the next album. This song's incredible. I love when Zeppelin does this. And again, they've done it in the past, but this is just their finest hour up to this point in these 3 albums right here with this kind of blues. Incredible.
So when I listen to this song, I picture Zeppelin playing at a club in the Midlands with about 100 people and just singing, playing to a private, small, intimate audience where they are able to connect. Now, this is also a song you could play in a stadium, but when I hear this, I think of playing in a smoky club. How the song starts, I actually like. I get a chuckle when you have at 52 seconds into the song, Plant goes, "Oh, like I got to chime in something," because at that point it's just the other 3 that are playing. The lyrics, which I love, it's got the blues background, but once again, there's the debate of some of the lyrics were from Moby Grape, and where in this case here, where Page, as I said in the last song, it's got that tight, quick 30-second solo. This here is just very, very soulful. You can hear it. It's just from each of them. It is just a gut-wrenching, powerful blues song. Plant's voice, I think, where it was raw on 1 and maybe in some aspects with 2, this is a fully mature voice. He is giving it all into the lyrics, and he can actually deliver. I think he was going a little too hard on the first album, but this here, I think it's as close to a perfect song as you've got in their catalog.
Murph, you are in my head because that's exactly what I was thinking ever since I've heard this song. It's a song that I envision Zeppelin playing in a dimly lit club, a small club. Everybody's sitting at tables, maybe back in like the 40s or 50s with a light on the table that's dimly lit, and there's smoke and cigar smoke and everything going on. And the song, what's amazing about it is it's recorded live. There's very little production added onto it as it was recorded. It pretty much is as is, and that's what makes it so remarkable, because it's a song that is long, and it's a song that really kind of takes you on a journey of passion about what you feel about somebody. It's sexy. It exudes sex. It really does. I mean, Plant's voice has often been referred to as if sex had a voice, it would sound like Robert Plant. And, my only question is, I've heard this song over the years, is how many people are walking the earth that were made while their parents were bopping to this song? It really is. This song is if any song in Zeppelin's catalog defines sex, it's this one.
So since I've been loving you, JBJ gets a writing credit, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. It was actually written in 1969, so it's one of the probably earliest tracks they wrote. It eventually, you would know this, Jay. You listen to a lot of bootlegs. It eventually replaced I Can't Quit You, Babe as the blues showcase number in their live performances. After they did this album, it started coming up everywhere. The engineer, Terry Manning, said this is the greatest guitar solo of all time.
Ooh, yikes. Okay. I'm not going to say it's not amazing, but that's the statement, but okay.
Yeah. These are the things that are mind blowing. JPJ is playing the bass pedals of the Hammond organ with his feet. And he did this purposely because they're like, oh, if we play this live, therefore we don't have to get anybody else and we can do this live if I do it this way.
Geddy Lee does the same thing in Rush. He has the bass pedals.
He has those hawk like feet with the big nails on.
He uses his talons to play them.
And then his nose can hit the keyboard if he has to go to the left.
Oh, come on, be nice.
Yeah. I find this, and I really want to pick your brains. Is this like their most, now we'll get to the other thing. I think Murph brought it up too. Most original blues song. When you think of like their blues song, I go to this, right? Anything else come to mind?
No, I agree, Zeus. The other stuff, I mean, clearly they're great songs.
Covers.
But this sounds just so authentic in that I don't know if it's just that at this point they felt comfortable enough that they could deliver this together. But getting back to what we talked about, what Jay was thinking, it's like just the song, the build up at the beginning and, the wailing and just the rawness in the middle and then the subtle out. Like, even if you look at some of their other songs, it just on the other albums, they may have had a similar tempo, slow build up, high pitch, and then slow. This just feels like it is just, it's original. It's, even though, there's debate about it, it just feels like this is all them at their core. And it's, for me, it's the most authentic sounding blues type song in that they've got in their catalog.
So you mentioned Moby Grape, right? So in 2005 they got an out of court settlement for that song that they supposedly it's called Never, and there was also a Yardbirds New York City Blues. They got a little bit of it. I mean, I don't know if have we got to a Zeppelin song that hasn't been said, oh, that got lifted from this. I mean, I don't know, but they did settle with him. I can tell you that. Tommy already talked about the squeaking in Bonzo's drum set, and then you hear Bonzo. The big part for me is 40 seconds in, where his drums come in, and they're just so damn effing heavy, and every cymbal crash, it's like, boom, it gets you. I love when the organ comes in. He just knows how to hit a mood. JPJ, the whole thing, when the organ comes in, it's got a kind of a haunting kind of church kind of a feeling to it. You know the song I Put a Spell on You? That song, that kind of organ kind of going on. And Bonzo's drum fills on this are just insane, fast, hard, heavy. At the 310 to the 320 mark, that's when I don't know, I would be hard pressed to find a Robert Plant vocal like performance of any kind better than that. I'm thinking of 4 if he has anything where he hit a higher note or had a higher range, but he is fucking wailing here at this point. And it's an incredible picture of a band where there's no one weak performer, where everybody is hitting peak performance on their instrument, whether it be the vocals, bass, guitar, or drum. And then there's that other little earworm where the guitar solo is about to take off at the 338 mark, and Robert says, "Watch out." And then I love comments before guitar solo. They always make the solo a little bit more interesting. There's so much feel and emotion throughout that solo. Again, it's all about touch, feel, holding a note. Certain guitar players can obviously do things faster, but do they give you that feeling when they hit that note and they can hold it? and make you want to hear more and more. And then Bonzo's going nuts, of course, in the drums during the solo.
I think Plant's vocals at the end when he howls and he screams.
Yeah.
Kind of really brings that song all together in that moment as the band comes in with that scream in that moment and really elevates that song into
I think the 6:18 mark. That's what you're talking about the 6 minute mark, 18 seconds, where he just goes off the charts on that note. I think that's what it was.
And I think that solidifies that this song and it, the way it ends, and it kind of ends like a 4th of July grand finale of fireworks at that moment. And it really makes it one of their best songs ever recorded.
Yeah. And then Bonzo's just over the top drum fills and stuff going on. But you know how the song starts off? Feeling like 7-Eleven. Ding, ding. That atmosphere, that bar. I swear, the image I get is Weird Science bar. You know what I'm talking about, Tom?
Of course I do. What? Every damn night on the telephone. What's this boy talking about on telephone? Explain it, man.
That blues bar where they're all like this and like swinging back and forth, and that's playing. Somebody's blasting "Since I've Been Loving You" in the background. Makes perfect sense.
Perfect.
It's just I don't know if you say I want to hear a blues song, but I want to hear it by a rock and roll band. Is there a better rock and roll band that does a blues song like that any better?
No.
I don't know. And I don't know any song that's better than that.
No.
All right. Let's go to last song on the side one.
Out on the Tiles, mostly written by John Bonham, which makes sense because it's an absolute kick-ass rocker. So we've gone on a little bit of a journey with some acoustic, some blues, but now we're back to kind of knocking it out of the park with a nice badass rocker. Out on the Tiles, slang for hitting the pubs. Which is kind of an interesting term. And I like this on the deluxe version. This is referred to as the bathroom song because Bonham said he thought his drums sounded like they were recorded in a bathroom. This is another song, kind of like Celebration Day, where I don't understand how this isn't a fucking hit. This is one of the great Zeppelin choruses of all time. For me, of all time. And I have a very distinct memory of hearing this song for the first time. Jay, one of our college friends, we'll refer to him as McLucas. Freshman year at Stonehill, he had this and he played Out on the Tiles. And I was like, oh, I like Zeppelin. Like, I've never heard this song. He's like, listen to this song, Out on the Tiles. And I was like, I can't believe I've never heard this song. Like, how is this not more well known? Bonham is not only doing his Bonham thing, but there's a little bit of shuffle there too with some of his drumming that's kind of unusual on a Bonham track. Usually it's just like balls to the wall pounding. But just an absolutely incredible song. Another one that I love that, you don't really hear this on the radio. I mean, maybe satellite radio, Sirius XM will play it like on classic vinyl once in a while, but it's another borderline deep cut that just should be more well known. It's a killer track for me.
Great song, but knowing how Zeppelin was famous for never using the title in their lyrics.
Great call, Murph.
I always thought this song was All Your Love because it was just, and so I would see Out on the Tiles, like, I don't know which one this is, but and I did discover about the slang for hitting the pubs. What I will take most from this song is, once again, hearing nuggets that are referenced later on. I hear the Black Dog, the opening to Black Dog in the beginning with just, that sound throughout the song. And then at the end with Plant going, oh yeah, I love the end, but I also hear a little bit of what Plant uses in Four Sticks. And so it's just going through the album and through the songs. It's like, oh, you just hear the seedlings that are kind of sprouting elsewhere. And the kind of the deep sounds, the wormholes, there's I think like a minute, 23 seconds into it, there's stop, so, there's just all this stuff going on and listening to it over and over. And this is one of those songs where I will listen to it repeatedly, back to back to back to back, because I'll listen to it and just say, I'm only going to focus on Bonham. And then the next time I hear it, John Paul Jones, just because there's so much going on in it. And then I think this is just an incredible performance by Plant as well. So great song. Once again, as you said, could have, is a deep cut, but really probably should have been more well-known and, could have been a classic rock staple.
This is a true deep cut as well as Celebration Day. I know there's a lot out there of how this song came to be, with John Bonham coming up with the name of it, but he also came up with the melody, as was explained by Jason Bonham in a show that was on VH1 Classics like a decade ago, where they had like the super band with Sebastian Bach and Scott Ian and Ted Newton. And he used to sing the melody. He used to go, we're going out on the tiles. We're going to have a beer and have a good time. We're going out on the tiles. And that's how the melody came to be with the song. And they were going to cover this on that show. And Bonham went out. Well, as the story goes, and this is why Plant is who he is. Before I say this, Out on the Tiles is one of the most difficult songs to sing live because of the approach of the vocals, because of the approach of the singer, Plant. It's almost like behind the beat. Mm-hmm. So it's got to hit right in certain areas. So Bonham, I guess, went out while the show was being taped with Page and Plant one night and told them about it. And Plant goes, yeah, you guys can cover a Zeppelin song. Sebastian can sing Out on the Tiles. Because Plant knows he won't be able to do it. And during the show they were recording it, Sebastian Bach was getting so upset because he couldn't hit the right moments that Plant was doing. And Plant knew what he was doing. Plant was just fucking with him, which makes him so much more awesome.
Nice.
But this song was the beginning of it, like Murph said, live used to be the introduction before the vocal break for Black Dog. They used to play the first few bars of Out on the Tiles. Later on, when they toured, it would be the beginning for Moby Dick. When they went into Moby Dick, they would play this live, and it's on a lot of bootlegs. So it's kind of like, because it's Bonham's song, Bonham's drum solo and whatnot. It's got an interesting history, a very different history than most Zeppelin songs, and how it was developed and how it was created. And I love the little stop that Plant says in the middle of the song, and they just keep going with the music. I remember summer after I graduated high school, I was driving my Toyota Supra.
Supra, wow.
Yeah. And my friend Peter was in the front seat, passenger seat. And he goes, can you fast forward to the song? The song sucks.
No.
And
what?
I turned off the road on the side
goodness.
street, and I told him to get the fuck out.
You should have.
And I was serious.
Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out. He's like, no, dude, you seriously? I'm like, no, get the fuck out. So he got out. I drove around the block, waited a couple minutes, and then he was walking. I said, all right, get the fuck in, but don't ever say the song sucks ever again. It's one of their best songs.
Man, that's incredible.
Good for you.
Absolutely good for you.
Out on the Tiles, written by John Bonham, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. Tom, correct. They called this the bathroom song. The thing that I wanted to add is they also added the front line of, as I walk down the highway, all I do is sing this song. So it's almost like Robert is saying this is John's song, because as he would walk down, he's singing this fucking song.
Yep.
And we just took it from that. So it's really cool. Tom mentioned the shuffle that's going on, which I agree. There's something going on. I don't know what he's doing, but it's working. And this is another one like Immigrant Song. There's no guitar solo in this song. And you would definitely think the two heaviest songs on this album would have a solo, and they don't. So there's no solo on that. And the thing that you mentioned, the whole stop, there's a couple different books and stuff that I read that mentioned it differently. So
Yep.
one says, it's a ghostly voice that says, after Robert sings, "I'm so glad I'm leaving you," that they say that it says stay. Is that purposely put in there? Then I heard, no, it's Jimmy or Robert that says stop because they're doing something in the track and it just made it in there.
Exactly. It's like it's
and
not
then
part of the
Jimmy's-
song.
Yeah, and Jimmy earworm stuff. I'll leave it in. Fuck it. What do I give a shit? Did they leave it in accidentally? It's at the 123 mark. Anybody that's interested. I believe Tom mentioned that it's slang for hitting the bars, the title. They played this live in 1970, and then it became, as you said, Jay, like it started becoming the opener for Black Dog or Bonzo's solo. The drums just, along with Jimmy's riff, are just fucking awesome. But it kind of works with the drums that you were talking about, Tom, and then Jay tells the story about Sebastian Bach. I wrote down, like, without knowing that story that you were saying, Jay, it's almost like the drums are playing a different song than what the singer is singing. And so it's like hard. Like, it's like, wait, but it works, but it's not like he's going along with what's being sung, but the beat works. It seems like it's something different. And it makes sense why somebody like Bach's like, yeah, I love that song. I'll sing it. Wait a minute. I can't
do this.
I can't pick this up. There's something wrong.
I just love the fact that I envision Plant going, oh, he wants to do a Zeppelin song? Have him do what you guys can do Out in the Tiles, knowing that they would never be able to do it.
Talk about a setup.
Yeah. Now, the song seems like it's a happier song, the lyrics and stuff. All I do is sing this song and stuff. But then they talk about how the last verse turns a little bit weird. Total disgrace, and talks about "see my rider by my side," which I guess in blues term means a woman who's constantly a CC rider and someone that cheats on you and embarrasses you, as though that becomes a total disgrace, as though his happiness is misguided throughout the first couple of verses in the song, and like the woman's like fucking around behind his back, so he realizes he's naive. So he's a total disgrace. I don't know, but I saw something about it and talking about it. In most blues songs, it's not a happy ending. The woman is like taking your money and banging your friends. It's something usually bad. So maybe that's what they were kind of going at. There's a really long outro going on here. And if you notice, like the riff is a whole different riff on the outro. It's something going, and Bonzo's going nuts, but the riff is different. It's not the same one throughout the song. It's always been a favorite of mine. It was always a deep cut. I remember because as I said, like Zeppelin III was the album that I got into as a kid, and I would always go to the song because it was a heavier rock song. And I always loved, like, when you have something like, this is my song. Hey, I bet you don't know this one. Listen to this. And I always used to play this song all the time. Loved it. And yeah, you're right. But it is, I think, a deep cut. I do not think it's you could call it anything else. So
yeah,
all
this
right.
song is not known by anyone else besides true Zeppelin fans. It really is.
Yep.
Yeah. And as said, if this gets played on a classic rock radio, people are like, what's that name of that song? There's no one
Zeppelin song?
All you love.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't that on In Through the Outdoor? Yeah. All right. Let's go to side 2 and the acoustic side.
Gallows Pole. Okay. This is just an incredible song here that's based on a traditional folk song, usually referred to by the title of The Maid Freed from the Gallows, inspired by a couple different versions. There's banjo. JPJ plays mandolin. I love songs that tell stories, and I love songs that kind of like evolve as they go. So it starts off as acoustic, hangman, talking about the gallows pole. Then the drums kick in. And then not only that, as the story continues that Plant is telling you, and he's telling it amazingly, but then the way the song kind of wraps up, the band is just on fire, just absolutely tremendously on fire. But to me, and this might be a generational thing, and I'm sure you guys may or may not agree, Murph, Zeus, I remember this is during Stonehill. I think of the No Quarter Jimmy Page, Robert Plant unleaded performance on MTV when I hear this song. Absolutely insane version of this song.
That was always in the commercial of it.
Yeah,
Any commercial on MTV had that clip.
this, and I always think of that performance when I think of this song. Again, we're talking about songs that, is this a deep cut? I mean, for people like us, maybe not, but I think it is. And it's another one that shouldn't be. Now, I hear this on satellite radio more than a lot of others, like Classic Vinyl. Classic Vinyl is a station that plays all the classic rock from like the 60s and 70s. So they play tons of Zeppelin. I hear this once in a while, but this is on the cusp of that mid-range deep cut song. And it's another one it's a travesty because this is top tier Zeppelin for me.
Yeah, Tommy, it's funny you say that. It seems that in recent years, it has popped up a little more frequently. And who knows the reason why. I'm always intrigued when you have a song such as this that, its roots goes back hundreds of years. So, anyone that's, Led Zeppelin doesn't have to worry about any litigation because everyone's dead at this point. But it's cool that they take this and they put their own spin on it. And we're going to talk about side 2 being the acoustic side. And this song, it builds up. I mean, you've got the banjo, the only song I think in their catalog where a banjo is used. The mandolin, but I think it's the 205 point where Bonham comes in, and it just picks up. He's telling a story, and then it just works up, and you got the plant by the end is kind of screeching, shrieking a little bit, and you get a little electric at the end. So it's this big buildup. And, granted, it's a heavily acoustic side, but this should have given folks listening, optimism that, hey, this, all right, this is good. There's elements on side 1 that were a little slow, but all right, maybe there's hope for side 2. And, obviously it goes in a different direction, but I think this is a really strong, powerful song that, delivers a wallop by the end.
It's kind of a forgotten song, but the Page Plant tour really revived it, like Tom said. I mean, I remember hearing this on that special, and I think it was the first video that they had for that special, which really elevated the song from a deep cut to more of a well-known song because of it. What strikes me about this song is Page always has this reputation of being a sloppy electric guitar player. I call it feel, I call it rawness, I call it rock and roll. But man, when he picks up an acoustic, he kills it. Like it's so smooth and it's so natural with his tone and the way he plays and the way he presents the notes. He's amazing. I don't know if there's a better acoustic player in rock history than Page.
It's a great point.
And the contrast that he has with that rawness and that sloppiness that people say about his electric guitar playing to his clean and his perfection of acoustic playing is really symbolic of what the album is, a huge contrast. So when you hear that opening riff, that opening notes of Gallows Pole and the way it keeps building throughout the song, like we've talked about, there's that element in there that I think people really appreciate Page as a complete guitar player as a result, because of the side of this album. It begins with Gallows Pole. Gallows Pole is sneaky good, and it's very underappreciated. It was played a little bit during the 71 tour, and I'm really glad they brought it back during the Page and Plant special and that tour that they had, because I do think it's a song that people do need to hear more and appreciate more.
So Gallows Poles is credited as traditional arrangement, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. Jimmy's playing the 6 and 12 string acoustic, the electric guitar, and a banjo, while JPJ plays his bass and mandolin. Jimmy adapted this version from the American folk musician Fred Gurlich. This song goes back centuries. and there's been different versions of this. What I like about this is there are different versions of this song in storytelling in different countries and different everything. And there are different fucking outcomes in everything. So traditionally, supposedly at the time, like Hangman would sit there. They wouldn't hang you right away because they'd be waiting for people to bribe you. So the fact of like friends coming, 2 out of 3 friends, no money. The brother, silver and gold. The sister gives him sex. And you're like, oh, he got it. Okay, great. But the guy's a fucking dick. And for no reason, he's laughing as he fucking pulls the lever and he sees him swinging on the gallows pole. You get the whole story all the way through. And it's just the callbacks of him saying to asking the brother, asking the friend, asking the sister, and then replying back to him, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. And then the gallows, the hangman is singing back the last line, saying, like being a dick and saying, thank you. Fuck off. I did bang your sister and I did get the gold. And now I'm going to laugh while you swing. So it's interesting because there are other stories where people get saved. Different things happen. Jay mentioned it does play live in 71. I think they would do something later on. It says that they would toss it in the middle of Trampled Underfoot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a little mashup they would do with the song. Those parts are always interesting to see when you read about, like, did the song ever get played? Where did it play? And when did they stop playing it? But anyways, Jimmy said he got the song because he picked up JPJ's banjo. And he's like, I just started fucking with it, playing chords that I know how to play. And they came up with let me just do this thing. Jimmy Page says this is his favorite song from this album.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a typical awesome shuffle by Bonzo going on with the cymbals crashing again. And as I'm not sure which one of you mentioned it, but I know one of you guys did. The outro on this is a fucking blast. The outro is a blast.
Yeah,
they're
crazy.
just rocking. There's all sorts of shit going on. And again, I'm a big fan of country and bluegrass and stuff like that. And this outro in this song always endeared itself to me in the original when I first heard it, because I love the story. And I love that the guitars pick up and it's not just a simple acoustic version. It goes and gets heavier and heavier. Dun, 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 dun. It's got some balls behind it. And it's a fun song. I think it's a fun song.
Absolutely. Yep.
The song will every time I hear it, and I think we're all of a particular age, you hear Hangman.
Yep.
Think of the game. Who's on the cover?
Vincent Price.
Vincent Price. One of the more underrated
Hangman
board games. But every time I hear it, I just immediately think of one of the most popular games of our childhoods.
Yeah, good reference.
Yep. I'll go grab me a tangerine.
So Tangerine. Oh boy. I mean, this is just, I don't use this word a lot because it doesn't really come up a lot when we're doing Kiss albums or album review crews, but
a good song.
No. This is what I would refer to as a gorgeous piece of music. It is an incredibly emotional and heartfelt song. Page wrote it back in the late 60s when the Yardbirds were still together. It really is just a touching and emotional song. The lyrics are just something that you don't really hear that often from something like Zeppelin. You hear Jay reference like the sex with Since I've Been Loving You and, that kind of stuff. But to hear, we did have Thank You on Led Zeppelin II, so they are known to do this, but Tangerine is just a really fantastic, beautiful, beautiful song, performed musically, and Plant's vocals, again, showing you that he can do something a little bit different, but do it just as well. Whatever the song needs, he delivers. And my goodness, is this just an amazing song.
Yeah. My musical tastes are, heavy metal, hard rock, it's certain segments, bands I like. My musical taste, especially as I've gotten older, has shifted towards singer-songwriter, folk, And so we're coming into, the part of the album that really I have a kind of just, I'm drawn to. And I understand why back in 1970, why some folks maybe weren't drawn to this, because you already had elements, even though this song was written, years before, you've got folks on the West Coast, you got Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills and Nash, you got there's that song coming out from the West Coast that, obviously people were drawn to, but many weren't. And that's why they were going to Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and so forth. So this is probably like, what is this? I love, and I'm sure, Zeus, you've got some specifics to get into of just how the kind of the start at the beginning. And I don't know if it was just someone was fumbling around and then it really kicks in, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds later. And it's a simple stripped down song. I mean, it does have a electric part to it. So once again, it's not truly an acoustic side, but it's a simple, basically stripped down song, but is just got beautiful lyrics. And I know, some of us on this are, or maybe all of us, Jay, I don't know your preference for the movie Almost Famous, but just one of my favorite movies, and it's the last song and how the movie ends. And I always will, just have that ending, one of my favorite Zeppelin songs at the end of one of my favorite movies is pretty cool.
Thank you for bringing up Almost Famous. Just an incredibly emotional, almost perfect movie, but we'll save that for maybe another episode when we talk about that movie.
Oh, you won't want to do it with me.
That's okay.
This is a beautiful song. Just in terms of what it's about, the arrangement, the tone of it. Zeppelin's catalog is filled with beautiful songs. We just talked about one of them with Since I've Been Loving You. This one's different though. This one is what I call pure beauty. And what I mean by that is whenever I hear this song, I envision things that I find beautiful, whether it's a cascade of changing leaves in the fall or whatever it is, someone that I had a relationship with in the past. But it makes me, as the song is, I think, intended to, reflect on love and things that you love in life. And again, I'll use that word that I've used frequently in this discussion for this album, the contrast. This is a folk song. This is the pure folk song on this album. I don't think any other song, there maybe a couple others approach it in terms of the folksiness of it. But then you go into this solo that we've talked about, that is this electric guitar and a Gibson that just has this incredible tone that and you have the folk music background in the backdrop of this guitar solo. The tone of the solo is very reminiscent to You Shook Me on Led Zeppelin 1, with the way Page plays and the progression of the notes and the delivery of it. The only complaint I have of this song is it's too short. I wish this song would never end, because it really is something special. And a lot of songs are special with Zeppelin, but man, this just hits a nerve with me for some reason.
So Tangerine credited to Jimmy Page. The motherfucker did it again. So in 1968, April 3rd, 1968, the last Yardbird session, it is his song. He did this song called Knowing That I'm Losing You. But supposedly he wrote it with Keith Rells, who's passed away. So after a while, his sister was like, that song is Tangerine, and some of the lyrics are in Tangerine from what you did as that demo. And so apparently, to appease her, Jimmy said, fine, I'll fucking do a Yardbirds album, 2017 album that he produced called Yardbirds 68. And he put that song, which is Knowing That I'm Losing You, on the album. But he stripped the vocals from it. Why the fuck did you do that? You didn't need to do that. You vindictive asshole. But But supposedly to appease her, he did that. So his estate in her basically could get some money from it. The song was Bron-Y-Aur inspired, you could say. And this and Dazed and Confused are the only two Zepp songs with Jimmy as the songwriter alone. A song about lost love or a past affair, a folk song, a country song, a ballad. I don't know what it is. It could be all three, could be one of any of those, but it's just a great song. And they used to play this in 1972 in their acoustic set. Jimmy plays a 6-string, 12-string, electric, pedal steel guitar. JPJ plays the bass and the mandolin. The song was supposedly about singer-songwriter Jackie DeShannon, who Jimmy was working with, and I think he banged her. And that's who the song was about. There's another one where we talked about in the beginning, A False Start.
Yep.
I love this false start.
Me too. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's the third time that Jimmy has a song start like that. Jimmy, the producer, that is. Immigrant Song and Friends has that. The album or the talking or the hiss, all that. Beautiful song. I love the fuzz on the solo. And you're right. It does have that kind of you shook me part to it, the playing on that solo. And there's this other earworm when Robert kind of whispers to think of us again. And I do.
Yep.
Like that pause. And then boom, that solo comes in. Oh, man. The outro is a little different. And I think it hints at Down by the Seaside. It's just a beautiful song. For me, one of my favorites. It's one of those, when so-and-so, I was dating so-and-so, that was our song. It always has a sentimental feeling. It's a beautiful song. And the thing is, the reason why it's Tangerine, he talks about things in gray. When he looks like right now, things are, but when he looks back on her, things are bright, like Tangerine. Those are happy moments. Those are bright colors. The sad parts are what he now deals with is that gray part. So that's why the song, the Tangerine part came in. Oh, let's go to the next track.
So we go from one beautiful song to another back to back. That's the Way. A beautiful song bordering on almost sad, like the emotions in this song. I guess it would, the mood that you're in when you're currently hearing it, I guess would probably affect the way that you're interpreting it, the way it makes you feel. Jimmy was really excited about Plant's lyrics, and he looked at it as like a breakthrough in the way that they were working as a songwriting team. It's just another beautiful song. There's nothing there really, but just the acoustics. It's even more stripped down than Tangerine. Again, Plant showcasing a style of vocals that, you're not used to hearing from Zeppelin. Usually you're hearing that wail that, whether it's Immigrant Song or, Out of on Tiles, but he can do these kind of contemplative type of singing and songwriting. And it's just striking just when you listen to this album, everything that they're doing. And to have this back to back, I think these are the two songs, in my opinion, that when people say, Zeppelin III, that's the acoustic album. It's because they're referring to these songs because they're obviously acoustic, but they're also very melodic, emotional, touching, beautiful songs. And another song that shows up in Almost Famous. And it's just another incredible performance.
Yeah, Tom, actually, I just getting ready for tonight. It's the only song that actually of Zeppelin's that's on the movie soundtrack.
Yes.
But yeah, it's back to back, two beautiful songs. I think obviously it's even more stripped down. Bonzo's only doing a tambourine that's noted at the end, and you actually really kind of have to put your ear out there to pick it up. In more of a subtle from when I listen to it, mandolin compared to other songs on the album. The one thing that when I listen to it, and maybe it's just me, I know I don't have the greatest ear for it, but it almost sounds like when Plant in the chorus, it might have been recorded a second time because it's very quiet, laid back, and then the chorus, it almost sounds like his voice projects more. And maybe that's the intent But it's a great song. It's, Jay, to your point, it's longer than the last one. I think in some ways Tangerine's a better song, but this one here is not too far behind.
I always categorize my favorite Zeppelin song in two categories, the popular songs and the deep cuts. And I always say Kashmir is my favorite Zeppelin popular song, and this is my favorite Zeppelin deep cut. In fact, if I had to choose between the two of them, depending on which day, most days I'll choose That's the Way. How you felt about Thank You and Led Zeppelin II, I feel about That's the Way. It just hits me, connects with me. It's a beautiful song like Tangerine. To go back to what I said earlier about Jimmy Page's acoustic guitar playing, Tangerine and That's the Way, my God, like it's just incredible. The way he picks and the way he plays and his approach. The song to me is so, it brings me back to being a kid and the lyrics are about your parents not wanting you to hang out with a kid because they had long hair or whatever. I had those conversations with my parents when I was growing up, and I'm sure most people who are our age had that conversation one way or the other. So it's very the way it connects with me growing up in a Catholic school means a lot, and it emotionally hit me because, man, I mean, I can hear those conversations to this day. This is Zeppelin at the top of its game with their approach and their songwriting. And like Paige said, there was a breakthrough, I believe, with this song. And when you keep hearing these songs on this album and you know what came after this, it really is the giant leap that Zeppelin had to have. And this song is that prime example, as Tangerine was, as Gallows Pole, as, even Since I've Been Loving You. This album is filled with nuggets like this. And for those listening who consider themselves Zeppelin fans and may not be familiar with this song, revisit it, because there's something completely special, very special about this song, about this side of the album that's going on with this band that is testing themselves and testing their audience at the same time. And this one becomes a winner, and it sounds better every time I listen to it.
That's the Way, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, originally titled The Boy Next Door, about problems two people have because they're either lovers or friends and their families. One sounds like he's a hippie, or they also talk about the way Zeppelin was treated on their first American tour when they visited the South, about their appearance and being considered like drug addicts and called certain things at one point. They played this live at the Bath Festival in the 1970s. You're like, how the fuck are they playing these songs? Didn't they just write it? But They would get these songs in, they'd learn it, boom, and could get it out. I think this is the biggest folk song they have. I call this a folk song more so than the Ballad of Tangerine, in my mind, especially with the lyrics and stuff. Jimmy's playing a 6 and 12 string guitar. He's also playing the dulcimer. The only time in the Zepp catalog that instrument was used. And he's also doing the bass. At the end of the song, he did the bass because he said when they did the song, they thought they were over. Then he wanted to add it, but John Paul Jones had gone home. So he said, fuck it, I'll just add this on there. He said, believe me, that was very rare that shit would happen. Yeah, because there's no need to replace John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones is playing the mandolin, and Bonzo himself, as Murph said, doesn't come in until the end with the tambourine, around the 4:45 mark, towards the end of the song. And then that's when you'll hear Jimmy's bass come in towards the end too, as well. I remember the song became more vivid to me after Almost Famous. There's a famous scene in Cutaway where the song is playing. 1994, the concert they did with Robert and Jimmy did together. That's when Robert announced, he goes, Jimmy's daughter was born about a half an hour after we wrote that song. Conceived, I should say, after they wrote that song. Basically, this is Bron-Y-Aur. They went to for a walk, the two of them, Jimmy and Robert, and they stopped at a ravine late, and they had the tape recorder with them. Page started playing some stuff, and Robert started improvising song, and the song came rather quickly. I always just remembered, and all the fish that lay in dirty waters
Yeah.
dying. When I was a kid, I would always remember that. It's so vivid, right?
Yep.
And then so I always thought, oh, it's an environmentalist, fucking, I don't know, who's that guy? Woody Guthrie, like shit like that.
Yep.
But then you read the lyrics and stuff, and yeah, it's got a lot of themes going on. It's a well-written song and well done. And just another part of the side 2. Let's go to the next track.
So this is Bron-Y-Aur, however you say it, Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, originally called Jennings Farm Blues, which is on the Led Zeppelin III Deluxe Edition, which is pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I will say that. We don't spend a lot of time on the Zeppelin Chronicles talking about demos and unreleased tracks, but Jennings Farm Blues is pretty friggin' awesome. It's really, it's very, very cool. It's like a little hoedown kind of stomping, like, you know, like yeehaw, stomp your feet, clap your hands kind of thing. But I kind of like it. You know, it's kind of a little extra special for somebody like me who loves his dog, where Plant's singing about his dog and the lyrics kind of talk about like a guy and his dog going for a walk and kind of just experiencing nature and kind of enjoying kind of where they are. It's a fun song. I mean, is it, you know, I think songs like this are probably where people come in and say Zeppelin 3. It's kind of like a weird album. It's not Zeppelin 4s. It's not Zeppelin 2. But that's kind of what also adds to the kind of the love of this album, is that it is unique and it is kind of unusual. But again, Jay, you've said it, like without these songs, you wouldn't have gotten Led Zeppelin 4 or In Through the Outdoor, or, you know, this is the framework for a lot of those interesting things that you would see later on in their career, which I think the four of us would agree we all eventually end up loving. But yeah, it's a fun song. I don't know if I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna put this on, but when it comes on, I'm like, oh, this is fun.
Boogie with Stu, Black Country Woman, shit like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is probably the song that if folks were kind of getting frustrated with the album, this is probably one where they said, okay, I'm done. As you said, Tom, it's a fun song. It's you know, getting back to what I said earlier when, you know, Since I've Been Loving You, this is a pub song. This is something where they'd just be sitting, they'd be, you know, with the clapping, and, you know, it's stripped down. It goes back to things that they can all connect to. And Zeus, I know you're a fan. I mean, this is a song that made me think of a couple of things. One, just "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" That's the type of song, and you know, you can understand why, you know, granted, all of them are influenced by how someone like Plant can have a connection 30 years later with Alison Krauss and come up with music that's similar in nature. Yeah, if you're looking for traditional Zeppelin, you're not getting with this song, but enjoy it. And it's not a terribly long song either. So just let it play through and move on to the next one.
I've always enjoyed this song. It kind of finishes off the record on a light note, with some songs that are a little deeper in their composition, like Tangerine, and that's the way. And you can even say that for Gallows Pole too, as well. This song was very well received live, and what Zeppelin did as a result of this album, and even into Led Zeppelin 4 and beyond, is they would, after this tour, I believe, would break up the set with an acoustic portion of the show, whether it was, you know, Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, Going to California, That's the Way, whatever they would put in there. Sometimes, you know, as they got later on in the years, Black Country Woman would be part of it. So it was a good break for the audience to kind of reset their ears and rest their ears after this loudness that they would hear for however long. And it just was a good moment in the show. And if you listen to some of the bootlegs that I have and you hear those portions, it's so different than what bands were doing at that time. You know, like they would break down the set, they would strip it down. Bonham would come from behind the drum set, you know, and he would sit up there with him on a stool, and they would just do 3, 4, sometimes 5 songs acoustically. And it became a staple as part, and this was heavily in that portion. So yeah, I really enjoyed how they finished off this. I mean, obviously we've got one more song to talk about, but this is really the last song on the album, in my opinion. And I like the way they finish it off with kind of a lighthearted song about a dog. Because I don't know, whenever I hear this song, I think about my dogs that I've had in the past and the dog I have now. So I enjoy it. Any song about a dog in rock history gets my vote for a great song.
Yep.
So Bron-Y-Aur, Stomp, John Paul Jones, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. Apparently, I've been saying this, I don't know correctly or not, but the song is misspelled.
Yeah.
It's supposed to have an R after Y, after the Y in the title, and it doesn't. Tom, you mentioned how great Jennings Farm Blues is. I have to jump on that too, man. I love it. Bron-Y-Aur, we talked about Golden Breast or Breast of Gold. This is heavily influenced by Bert Jansch. Influence, by the way, I said. Wagner's Lad. If you hear it, you go, that's the fucking song, which is always disappointing. I'm like, how much does it really sound? Then you hear it, you're like, oh, fuck. But it does sound a lot like it. So Merle, I think he's acting like it's a type of dog, but it's not a Merle. That's like the shade of some of the fur. He had a collie, and there's awesome pictures of Robert with his dog at the time, Strider.
Yep.
Yeah, which is some sort of Lord of the Rings reference. Like, oh God, dude,
Settle down with the friggin' wizards shit.
You just got all those nerd bands that come out, those fucking Dungeons and Dragons metal people. And
you have to remember what time this was, though. I mean,
I know.
No.
Yeah,
he does this shit, but then all the nerd like Dungeons and Dragon bands like go to the extreme. Like, I'm gonna build our band's concept around Vikings and warriors from battles and sorcery and shit like that. Yeah. But Robert didn't have that wasn't Zeppelin's image. He just sang a few songs like that. And unfortunately, all the Dungeons and Dragon bands took over.
Well, he didn't help himself too with what he did in Song Remains the Same with his little sword and everything. So he kind of played into it.
Good point.
Yeah. I'd rather see him with his little sword than those awful photos of him on the soccer field with those nut tuggers.
Oh, those nut tuggers. Super 70s on Twitter loves that picture.
His shorts are about like 4 inches, if that.
It's not good.
No, it's not a good look. You're right. So, you know the band I think about? Stone Temple Pilots used to do that. When they had their second album, Purple, and I saw them live, right in the middle of the set, boom, they would play like 6 songs on an acoustic set live and then go back to it was fucking awesome. And they used to play this live along with that. And at the end of the song, he would scream out the dog's name, Strider, right? And the crowd started to fucking love that shit. Sometimes it became a melody, apparently, with a Black Country Woman. There's a reference to Old Shep, an old bad Johnny Cash Elvis song. I remember every fucking 50s guy would sing that song, Old Shep. It's like Old Yeller. Fucking the saddest song of all. They gotta fucking put down this dog. I'm like, what the fuck? Who made every singer sing this awful song? But he meant there ain't no Old Shep gonna happen again, he says. So it's a happy thing. It's a non negative there about Old Shep in this song. JPJ plays a fretless 5-string acoustic bass. Bonzo's adding spoons and castanets to his hand claps and maracas. Dude, can these guys just, I'm the drummer, I play bass,
Nope.
Think about this shit. How sophisticated these guys are, and they can do it. It wasn't a big deal. So we didn't really talk about this much, but in the beginning, their story goes that after Zeppelin II, while they were touring, they were supposed to get together to release a single. Like, you know, how bands do singles.
Mm-hmm.
And that single was going to be Jennings Farm. And they decided to scrap it. Like, let's keep it aside. So they obviously put that stuff aside. And they said, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just do an album. So that's why Jennings Farm, there's that comes up on the deluxe. There's a copy of that demo. That's what they were working on to try to make that into the song. Because Ahmet over at Atlantic was like, why don't you guys put out a single? Well, the closest thing to that then eventually became Immigrant Song, which did become a top 20 hit for them. So that's something. The song is old-timey music, Appalachian, bluegrass type of song. And it's probably why I like it. The stomp in that is the stomping of the feet. So that's the whole part where Bonzo comes in. So this is what I love about it. Jimmy opens it up, Bonzo with the bass drum and the hi-hat alone. Then bass comes in. Then the vocals comes in at the 47 mark. Then the claps come in at the 116 mark. Then the maracas come in at the 130 and the castanets come in at 328 and the spoons come in. It's like, what the fuck? Instrument after instrument after instrument keeps coming up and it peaks and it keeps picking up. Robert is harmonizing with himself. As he does throughout this whole album, you can hear it. I feel like I'm already, I can tell you guys right now, on a different planet with you guys as far as this album goes. This is probably my favorite. I wouldn't say country because it's not a country song, rock acoustic song of all time. Jimmy's guitar playing, like, this is what makes me want to learn how to play guitar, to be able to sit at a fucking campfire and to imagine myself having even 1/10 of the talent that Jimmy Page has to play this fucking acoustic song would be amazing. And having everybody, you could sing this with your friends and play this on a guitar around a campfire and love and just clap and bang and stuff. This is such a fun fucking song. And couple earworms on this. Will our love go on and on and on and on and on and on? There's 6 times he says that. Ain't no companion like a blue-eyed Merle. You're the finest dog I know, so fine. I don't know. My words can't go on any further about this. It's a fun fucking Zeppelin song, and it's probably my favorite acoustic song they've ever done and favorite rock band's acoustic song, because it has just Jimmy Page's brilliance on the guitar is unmatched. So, last track.
Hats off to Roy Harper. Here are my notes on this. An unlistenable mess. No John Paul Jones, no John Bonham. The backing vocals and tambourine are done by roadies. Look, there's no excuse. I get it. If you want to honor this guy that I've never heard of in my entire life, Roy Harper, I get it. This is a disaster. It's a mess. It's the thing that sinks an otherwise borderline perfect album. You fucked up, Zeppelin. You let this turd make it onto the album. That's all I can say. It's horrendous. It's a mess of noise.
It definitely throws you off once you hear it. Knowing the backstory of it, okay, great. Roy Harper apparently didn't even know until they pointed it out to him, and he didn't really have, I think, immediate positive things to say about it. Yeah, it's the last song on the album. It's different. It's not like anything else in their catalog. They've never played it live.
It would have been better if it was hats off to Ron Hopper.
Great defensive guard for the Cavaliers in the Bowl.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Wasn't he part of the melee at the Palace?
No, that was
Ron Artest. The Malice at the Palace?
Maybe they played this song before the fight.
People wouldn't fight.
So yeah, not a lot you can really say about it. Just Jimmy and Robert felt compelled to put it on the album, and it's out there. And usually for me, I'm going to stop after the last song.
All right. This song is probably the song I've played the fewest amount of times in the Zeppelin catalog. And it's probably like, I wouldn't say it's above like 3 times. I have no desire to listen to this song. I have no desire to revisit it. It's horrible. I don't know what's going on. This is an example of a band thinking they're clever
Yes.
They're too clever and putting it on some inside joke or some inside thing that the band only knows about that the audience just does not get. There are very few missteps in Zeppelin's history. This is definitely one of them. And the fact that the song Hey, Hey, What Can I Do, which was on the Immigrant Song B-side, is left off this album for this pile of trash.
Yeah, Jay.
Is I'm not going to say unforgivable because Zeppelin, you always forgive Led Zeppelin for their mistakes. But
yes,
it's just, I can't fathom having the option of having, hey, what can I do? That's still a good song. No, let's put Hats Off to Roy Harper as the last song and leave off, hey, what can I do? What the fuck are you thinking? That means that moment when they made that decision, there was too much cocaine on the mixing board in the studio when they were making that decision, because there's no reason a level-headed person thinks that this deserves time on an album.
When you're producing your own music, nobody tells you no.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that's a common thing. There was no one in the room going, what the fuck, guys? Yeah, don't put this on there. So, yeah, it is a misstep. It's a mistake. Again, I think this album ends at Bron-Y-Aur Stomp. I mean, I've literally listened to this song less than 5 times in the last 30 years. It just doesn't do anything for me. And I've never heard another Zeppelin fan, say positive things about it. It's a forgotten tune, but it's one of the few times that I get annoyed with Zeppelin, knowing like I just said that Hey, What Can I Do is not on this album for this. And if it wasn't going to be on this album, just end the album at 9 songs. So
put this on the deluxe version as like an unreleased track.
This is exactly what belongs on a deluxe version. Like, this is what we didn't put on the album. Thank God you didn't put this on the album. But yeah, I mean, there's really nothing left to say about it. It's a pile of trash.
Hats off to, parentheses, Roy Harper. Traditional, arranged by Charles Obscure, which is an alias for Jimmy Page. It's based on the Booker White blues song Shake 'Em On Down. They changed the title as a tribute to their friend Roy Harper, who they just met in person at the Bath Festival. So you just met him and you name a fucking song after him?
They were high. That's the only reason. They were fucking high when they
I hope they were.
Jimmy ended up doing an album with him in 1985.
Ugh.
And he tried to get him to get signed to his swan song, which it was his label, and he still couldn't do that. And he opened for Zeppelin for a little bit.
It's better than a magician.
And a painter.
Yeah, painter.
A magician.
Actually, I would have rather had a magician than a painter. But anyways, go ahead, Zeus.
Robert is using that vibrator amplifier to make his voice do that weird sound. When I first heard this and I had the cassette and I bought this, I honestly thought I'm in middle school. I didn't know. Like, there's something wrong with my cassette. So the fucking tape is broken.
Yep.
What is this? Shake them on down. Like, what the fuck? It's like Katharine Hepburn vocals. What's going on here?
Nice.
My tape is broken. Fans did not like this, but it has grown on on everybody. Jimmy's doing a bottleneck. I mean, this is about as blues as you can get. And I get the critics all said, like, oh, the guitar work, this is such a blues song. And Robert tried to make it as blues as possible, like making it sound like you just found an album from the 1910 and put it on. It's that's what it sounds like. And literally from an album that you found from the 1910s or something. Jimmy says the real meaning of the song is, hats off to anybody who sticks to what he thinks is right and has the courage to not sell out. Robert said,
I got that from listening to the song, Jimmy. That's what I picked up on.
Robert says when Roy found out about the song, he goes, he didn't know what to say. Yeah, probably like, dude, you named this song after me, not fucking Immigrant Song or something like that. It's never been played live, and it's the first Zeppelin song to be played by 2 people, Robert and Jimmy. And it's just, I just remember shotgun wheel.
I just can't believe we had a Katharine Hepburn reference in the Zeppelin Chronicles.
So I will tell you this. Because it's so bad, I've gotten used to it because I've listened to this album so many times. I don't have a problem with it anymore. I don't like it really, but I don't have a problem with it. It's a fucking wicked, over the top, like authentic blues song. But I don't like that kind of music. Maybe somebody that does would really be attached to this. Just, again, I would rather be here than not be here. I'd rather be on an album than never heard of this. But I'm not a fan of it. It is what it is. What are you going to do? That's Zeppelin III. Final thoughts, Tom, before we go to ranking the songs.
Yeah, look, we're Zeppelin geeks here. We love Zeppelin. It's a great album. It's a unique album. It's a unique experience. It's unlike Zeppelin 1 and Zeppelin 2. That's all we're going to talk about because we've only done the first 3 albums. It's a go-to album when you want to experience something different from Zeppelin. It's not the bombastic Zeppelin 2 that's, primarily the hard rock stuff. It's a unique experience. You get the acoustics, the blues, you get a couple of heavy hitters here, but it's an outlier in their early catalog for a reason. But it's a great album. It's a great experience. It was fun to take a real deep dive into this, as these episodes are always amazing to do. It's Zeppelin III, and sometimes you're at a loss for words to describe these guys, but.
So thinking about this album, that an album that came out 3 years before I was born, that I would feel such a strong connection to, mentioned at the outset, did not come upon this album until after college. I listened to it in a way that in a different way. I have a really strong appreciation. And as my taste in music has evolved, I'm actually drawn more to this album than any other in the catalog. So this one, last song notwithstanding, really resonates with me. And I've been waiting a long time. It was a long 7 months to get here to do this album. I'm glad we were finally able to do it today.
As I've said during this conversation, this album has grown with me as I've evolved as a person, as I've evolved as who I am today. I mean, listening to this when I was younger, 17, 18 years old, it didn't connect with me right away. And as time has gone by, this has become one of my favorites in their catalog. It is a great album, great songs. And it really, outside of Immigrant Song and probably Since I've Been Loving You, is filled with deep cuts. All the songs that we talked about outside of those two, whether it's Friends, Celebration Day, On the Tiles, Tangerine, That's the Way, all of them are songs that diehard Zeppelin fans truly do know and truly do appreciate. And maybe it's because Immigrant Song is such a gigantic song that anything that came on this album, was kind of dismissed. Maybe it's because Since I've Been Loving You is that sultry blues song that is just almost a perfect song. These other songs don't get the attention, or maybe it's the way it was just dismissed when it first came out by a lot of people through the first, its first 10, 15, 20 years of existence. But I think this album, in a way, over the last couple of decades, has finally arrived in terms of the appreciation that it's long deserved. So I'm really happy we finally got a chance to discuss it. It truly is a diamond in the rough in their catalog.
So for me, I feel as though if you love Zeppelin III, then you get Led Zeppelin. If you like, then you're a hits guy. And that's what you're not a big fan of Zeppelin's catalog. Because everything here, if you like the songs on Zeppelin III, you'll find those other diamonds in the rough on other albums, because you'll pick up that style and you're open to other songs by Zeppelin. There are people that just like maybe some of the softer songs by Zeppelin, a lot of the ballads and stuff. A lot of the female fans love those. Then there are others that like only like the fucking, oh, I like Black Dog. I like Cashmere. I like that. Okay, you're a hits guy. Okay.
I like how you mock people who like Black Dog now. That's what we're doing.
No, I'm saying that if that's all you're saying, like I like Led Zeppelin. Yeah, I like rock and roll.
Oh,
I like Black Dog.
I like Hats Off to Roy Hopper.
No, what I'm saying is, so people that are eventually like, I like Black Dog. Yeah, I like I like the Rolling Stones. Yeah, I like Start Me Up. People that only know hits. But if you like Zeppelin III, that means you get them and you feel those other songs where you can pick up on the brilliance of Celebration Day or pick up on the subtleties of That's the Way. There's different things going on. And then that's why you'll pick up the deep cuts on Physical Graffiti or even on Presence, which most people are like, but you'll find that if you like Zeppelin III, you'll like those albums. And this opens up a lot. And there's a reason why we're all excited to do this, because we're all big Zeppelin fans. So that being the case, we're going to rank these songs. There's 10 of them. And we're going to start with Tom. And number 10, I'm assuming, is not Hats Off for Roy Hopper.
Oh, it's Hats Off to Roy Hopper at number 10.
Can we just all move to 9? Is it 10?
I think we're all going to, I'm pretty sure everybody has this as 10.
10 is Roy Hopper.
Yeah.
Jay?
My 10 is Hats Off to Roy Hopper. I think it's the consensus.
Yeah, all the way through. But I just don't have it as poorly as you guys. But yeah, it's not the best song on this album at all. So number 9, Tom, you're up.
Friends
For me, number 9.
I'm going to go with Friends as well.
Oh, you guys are off. That's the Way.
You have that at 9?
Absolutely. It's a folk song.
What the fuck? Are you serious?
Oh, I love this. Don't worry.
It's a folk song.
Aren't you the one that said that Plant overplayed his oohs and ahs and Whole Lot of Love?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Number 8, Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, or whatever the hell it's called.
Number 8 for me, Bron-Y-Aur Stomp.
Yeah.
Number 8 for me, Bron-Y-Aur Stomp.
Friends.
Okay. Now, this is where I will tell you right now, this happens every once in a while. I have rearranged my list during this episode 3 separate times. This is really, really difficult because these next 7 songs are they're all fucking heavy hitters for me. But number 7, Immigrant Song.
Number 7 for me, Celebration Day.
Number 7 for me is Gallows Pole.
Oof.
7, Since I've Been Loving You.
6, That's the Way.
6 for me, Immigrant Song.
6 for me is Immigrant Song.
6, Gallows Pole.
5 for me is Since I've Been Loving You.
5 for me, Gallows Pole.
5 for me is Out on the Tiles.
5 is Out on the Tiles.
4, Celebration Day.
4, Out on the Tiles.
4 is Tangerine.
4 is Immigrant Song.
3 for me, Out on the Tiles.
3, That's the Way.
3 is Celebration Day.
3, Tangerine.
And that is my number 2, Tangerine.
2 for me is Tangerine.
2 for me is Since I've Been Loving You.
2, Celebration Day.
My number 1, which I think is unique amongst everybody in the group here, my number 1 is Gallows Pole.
Nice.
Wow. My number 1 is Since I've Been Loving You.
Ooh, all right.
My number 1 is That's the Way.
Number 1, and I'm unique with you, Tom. Bron-Y-Aur Stomp. Love it.
Wow.
I can learn how to play guitar. I would learn to play that. Probably my
Number 1.
first fucking song. That in Celebration Day, which I feel doesn't get as much because it's number 2. It's not a number 1 for me. Those 2 are probably, I don't think it will get knocked down from Mount Rushmore for me.
Wow. That's incredible. Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's do the math. So we have it as Celebration is number 3. Since I've Been Loving You is number 2. And number 1 was combined with all of us is Tangerine. Now comes the fun part. Ranking Zeppelin albums. Oh, man. This isn't ranking a Zeppelin album against Heat. So, okay, first we're going to do the album covers. Since we've only done Zeppelin 1 and 2, I think everybody, so we don't have to go through the list, everybody picked Zeppelin 1 except for Jay. Jay had Zeppelin 2. And I think there was close with all of us. But Tom, how are you ranking these?
I think just for anytime an album cover has like something you can play with, it's got to go. Zeppelin 3's got to go number 1. I mean, for Christ's sake, it's got a spinning wheel that you can kind of mess around with. It's number 1.
Okay. Murph.
Yeah, the debut album, I don't think that's ever going to get moved out of the slot. Just it's such a powerful album cover, but this would be Led Zeppelin 3 would go into the second slot.
You're dropping the Brown Bomber down to 3?
Dropping the Brown.
The Brown Bomber. Now that was a great fighter. Jay.
I'm going to put Zeppelin 3 at number 3.
Oh, number 3. Wow. Okay.
So I've got Zeppelin 1, 2. So I am putting Zeppelin 3 as number 1. Like Tom. Cover's fucking awesome. And then to think they could even have made it better, make it black. Oh,
I know. I love that original. Yeah. Yeah.
So now we're going to do the actual albums. Whew. Tom?
I got Led Zeppelin 1 at number 1 and Led Zeppelin 2 at number 2. I struggled mightily with those two. I did not struggle with my ranking for this. I love this album. It's fantastic. But you can't have Hats Off to Roy Harper on an album and not be last. That is your penalty for you get your last. I love this album and I go to it often, but Hats Off to Roy Harper. I can't pretend it doesn't exist. It exists and you're last because of it.
I can't I always find that stuff fascinating because it goes on how you actually pick an album. Like, do you penalize if there's a song that you don't like, or do you give more because, this has 3 of my favorite songs of all time and one I don't really like? Like, how does that work? That's awesome to know.
So that's a fair question for this. So put it this way. I'll be fair. Even without Hats Off to Roy Harper, it would probably still be last, only because ranking these Zeppelin albums, and when we get to Led Zeppelin 4, it's not going to be any easier. It's way more difficult than ranking like a Kiss album or anything, because all 3 of these albums on any given day could be my favorite Led Zeppelin album. Mm-hmm. But this just offers not enough of the kick-ass Zeppelin. Like, it doesn't need to be all kick-ass. It doesn't need to all be, Whole Lot of Love and, mm-hmm. Good Times, Bad Times. I like the variety, but there's just not enough on Zeppelin 3, even though I love everything about the album except for poor Roy Harper.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I had Led Zeppelin 2, followed by Led Zeppelin 1. In spite of Hats Off to Roy Harper, there are just too many songs on this album that are, in discussion for not only my top 10, but Mount Rushmore for Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin 3 goes to the top.
Woohoo!
Yeah, see, that makes sense. And Murph is grading his the way there's so much good stuff that it outweighs the Roy Harper. For me, Roy Harper carried too much weight for me. So, but that's
okay. Why I love these. Yeah, but that's why I love these. Like, everybody does their albums differently where they pick.
Yep.
So, Jay, you're up, buddy.
Led Zeppelin 3 is an important album for Zeppelin, as I've mentioned, and it really is the gateway to what came after. And the reason why I'm going to put it at number 2 is because I think it means more to Zeppelin's career than Led Zeppelin 1 does. Because as they move farther away from that album becomes less and less what they are about. Led Zeppelin 1's a great album. It's one of the best debuts of all time, but Led Zeppelin III, again, is the rebirth of Zeppelin and is the catalyst for what came, and that's why I would put it at number 2. I don't think it's as iconic as Led Zeppelin II because you've got songs like Whole Lotta Love and Ramble On and Bring It On Home and Thank You. So I would definitely put it at number 2.
Okay. So this is a no-brainer. If we did a Mount Rushmore of albums, I don't see anything taking over Zeppelin Zeppelin 3 for Zeppelin for me. If we were like doing an ARC, this would be number 1 right now. If on our ARC albums that we have, this would jump ahead of Hotel California, ahead of Automatic for the People. I've listened to this probably more than any other album, and I listened to every single Kiss album way too many times. This is just there's too many songs that I can't ever get sick of. There's too many earworms going on, and I love it. So I find this fascinating that one of us has it third, one of us has it second, and two of us have it number 1. So, and it's Zeppelin 3, and you take Zeppelin 3, and if you put that in our ARC albums, it'd probably be your
top 5.
Yeah.
Oh, easily.
And that's your third album.
Yep. That's why this band is friggin' incredible. Because you could have Zeppelin 3 as the 3rd ranked friggin' Zeppelin album, and I still love everything about it. Almost everything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, what we do next is this.
Well, it's time to revisit the bootlegs of Led Zeppelin. The crucial part of any Led Zeppelin fandom is listening to the bootlegs that they came out. And just to reiterate what's been discussed in the past, Led Zeppelin doesn't really have a lot of material, at least when they were making records. Song Remains the Same was a movie and it's a soundtrack, but it doesn't nearly capture the essence of Zeppelin and what they were about live. And that's why the Zeppelin bootleg collection and the collectors that are out there are so into the differences, because Zeppelin never played the same show twice. They may have played the same set list, but there were differences with the songs and the approach and what they did. And this one, folks, is an extremely important bootleg because it's in large part the first bootleg that really gained notoriety for Led Zeppelin and really started this huge movement of bootlegs, and that is Live on Blueberry Hill. Just a fantastic bootleg, recorded again at the LA Forum, and we've talked about this. Led Zeppelin's second home or home away from home was LA. The stories and the Red Snapper happened at the Hyatt, which they called the Hyatt House. Zeppelin was the center of attention for ever how long they were in LA. They usually did multiple nights as their career went further and further. And this show really shows the band coming into their own after the short Led Zeppelin 1 tour and then into Led Zeppelin 2 and what they were becoming and the reputation they had as a powerhouse for a live act. This is an audience recording. It's one of the first Led Zeppelin bootlegs that I mentioned. And, when I talk about recordings, for those listening and for those interested in bootlegs, there's soundboard and there's audience. And audience is like you think. It's somebody with a handheld device recording the show. Most audience recordings don't turn out very good. There are a few Zeppelin ones that are top notch, and this is one of them. The thing about these tours, 1970, 1971, was because Zeppelin released Zeppelin 3 and then shortly thereafter Led Zeppelin 4, a lot of the set has songs from both those albums. This is one of the unique ones where it really stays within the songs with Led Zeppelin 3 and before. But the further this tour goes, they started adding in songs from Led Zeppelin 4, and then Led Zeppelin 4 came out, and then, of course, they're playing a few more songs from that. So Zeppelin would do that. Zeppelin would be playing songs that they had recorded during these sessions or during a particular session and, play a song that was going to come out on the next album. Since I've Been Loving You was one of those songs that was played during the tour for Led Zeppelin II, but of course it was recorded during Led Zeppelin II, like I mentioned, but they would do that frequently. So the set list is Immigrant Song, they open up with. They go into Heartbreaker, Dazed and Confused, Bring It On Home, and then they did a short acoustic part, which they did That's the Way and Bron-Y-Aur, and then Since I've Been Loving You. The Since I've Been Loving You version on this bootleg is a masterpiece. I mean, if you hear this version, you will like be blown away. And you realize at that moment that what's on Led Zeppelin III does not do this song justice. This version is by far one of the best, if not the best versions ever recorded in Led Zeppelin's history. The organ solo follows next into Thank You. This version of Thank You is absolutely incredible. What Is and What Should Never Be into Moby Dick, and kind of what they were known for afterwards, was with their medleys. And this is Whole Lotta Love. And in the middle of Whole Lotta Love, they go into Boogie Chillin', That's All Right, Moving On, Red House, Some Other Guy, Think It Over, Honeybee, and the Lemon Song back into Whole Lotta Love.
Nice.
I mean, this is a 35 minute version of Whole Lotta Love. Fucking incredible.
Nice.
Okay.
I love that. I love when they do that.
Then they went into Communication Breakdown, and they did another cool medley, which they do a lot of this stuff, especially during Dazed and Confused. They did some of it during How Many More Times in the past, but they would do this frequently. But the medley for Communication Breakdown is Good Times, Bad Times. For What It's Worth, the old Buffalo Springfield song, into I Saw Her Standing There. Just another great version for Communication Breakdown. And then they finish with Out on the Tiles and into a little special treat, which is hence the name of the album. They do a cover of the Fats Domino song, Blueberry Hill.
Wow.
Show. So Zeppelin fans, if you want to get a bootleg, you've got to have this in your collection. This is a must have. For all Zeppelin fans, Blueberry Hill is a quintessential Led Zeppelin bootleg. It's been around forever. And if you are a Led Zeppelin fan, a Led Zeppelin collector, and you don't have this in your collection, you need to remedy that immediately. But that is my pick for Led Zeppelin III's bootleg. And hope you get it and hope you enjoy it.
Nice.
Now,
Excellent.
when you said Bron-Y-Aur, that you're talking Stomp.
Yes.
Okay, because it's not the instrumental that they do later on.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jay, for that. And before we go, we always like to say, tell us a little bit about your show, buddy.
Well, The Hook rocks. We just did our 400th episode, or since we've last recorded 10 years ago. I started a podcast, and we celebrated our 400th episode. We're approaching 450.
Oof, wow. God bless.
Our 300th episode, our 3-year anniversary. We're finishing up here strong here in 2023. I had a medical issue back in September, and I ended up in a rehab center after the surgery for 2 weeks, and I was actually recording episodes while I was in the rehab center. So I would tell the nurses to not disturb me for an hour and a half, and I was doing interviews while I was in there. And great way to pass the time, but I needed to do something, and I had my computer. I had the Zoom app on my computer. I'm like, shit, I'm tired of staring at the wall. I'm not a big TV watcher, so unless there's football on or baseball or hockey, I'm not really watching much TV. So I had to do something. But some really good things. We've got our year-end album review show coming up, which has become our staple. It garners a lot of interest and a lot of views and a lot of listens. And just like we did last year, we'll be doing our top 25 with some collaborations. We do really focus on new rock and new artists, and not so much the legacy artists that are out there, although they're releasing good material, but our primary focus is on the new stuff that's happening. We've got some good things planned for the following year, some good guests coming up after the first year that it's really hard to stay mum about, but you will all know in due time. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the Zeppelin Chronicles. This is one of my favorite things to do. And even though, I've had 3 children since our last episode, and changed careers, and I had 2 birthdays since then. So it's been a phenomenal journey, and I can't wait to do Led Zeppelin for the Zoso album coming up.
And it won't be 7.
Yeah.
It won't be 7 months for that, I can tell you, because that's an exciting one.
Yeah. 2043.
Okay, there you go. We can make it.
So while we were in diapers, we do that.
We're not now.
Well, it's a good thing you got used to typing, doing episodes from a hospital bed, because that'll probably be where we're all for the next one.
Probably be,
Keep it down. Keep it down, everybody. I'm going over 4 sticks. What the fuck?
Where's my pain meds?
Yeah. Murph, tell us about you. What are you up to? You doing a podcast of some sort?
No,
Piss cups and ceiling tiles.
Yeah, just spending my time listening to the Hook Rocks and Zeppelin Chronicles, listening to how awful my voice sounds from an audio perspective, and then Shout Out Loudcast and my new favorite podcast, Dorm Damage.
Yeah, Murph, Dorm Damage.
Awesome. It's kind of funny how we started this text message for this episode. I texted you guys. Remember that podcast, Zeppelin Chronicles? That was such a great show. Those guys really knew what they were talking
You
about.
did that was kind of a little bit of a kick in the ass, although Zeus and I have been talking for probably 2 months that we wanted to get this episode done.
Just so much shit.
It's been tough.
Yeah, we'll get Zeppelin
tough.
done before the end of the year. Oh, yeah, we'll get Zeppelin. It's the end of the year. We better get it.
We got it done.
Tom, what about us? Do we have anything going on or not?
Yeah, so if this is your first time hearing us, we are Shout It Out Loudcast. We're an all Kiss podcast. We drop Kiss episodes every Saturday, every week, every Saturday. We do also do the album review crew with our friend Sonny. We do those once a month. We review non-Kiss albums of all different genres. And then we have another sidecast called Dorm Damage, where we drop like 30, 40-minute episodes just talking about whatever. Really doesn't have anything to do with music sometimes. It could just be pop culture, current events, anything. And then, of course, we have the Zeppelin Chronicles with the 4 of us, which we're glad that we finally got this one done before the end of the year. And like I said earlier, we're going to get to Zeppelin 4 much sooner. You can find us on our website, shoutitoutloudcast.com. We're on all the social media and our email as well, shoutitoutloudcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Zeppelin 3. Let us know what you think about Roy Harper. Let us know what you think about Ron Harper. But yeah, I mean, these are always a blast. I mean, 4 people talking about a band that we absolutely worship. So you can't get much better than this.
Yeah, it's getting close to the end of the year. So from all of us, we want to wish everybody happy and safe holidays and a happy new year. And we'll see you guys soon. But before we go, we always like to do some lyrics. So, Tom, you got any?
Yes, you got a fine sister. She warmed my blood from cold. She brought my blood to boiling hot to keep you from the gallows pole.
Hey, how you doing?
Murph.
Thinking how it used to be. Does she still remember times like these? To think of us again. And I do.
Jay.
And yesterday, I saw you kissing tiny flowers. With all that lives is born to die. And so I say to you that nothing really matters. And all you do is stand and cry.
Oh, Gary. Oh, Roy Harper.
Oh, yeah. I'll get you, Tom, on this one. My, la, la. Come on now. It ain't too far. Tell your friends all around the world. Ain't no companion like a blue-eyed scout.
Yeah.
Scout.
My boy.
Tom, Murph, Jay, Loudcaster, Zepp fan, Kiss Army, everybody. Thank you. Have a safe and happy holidays. And we'll see you next year on the Zeppelin Chronicles.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Guys, thank you so much. This is a blast. Let's do this again much, much sooner. Happy holidays to everybody. Be safe. And let's say goodbye to 2022.
Yep. Peace out, Girl Scout.